First item on the agenda we have is the reorganization for the nomination of the chair and the vice chair for 2012. In light of the fact that neither one are in attendance, we're going to table that until next time.
I move we table that.
All in favor?
I think we should go ahead and vote, especially since they're not here.
Yeah, right.
No, I move to table.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Next item is minutes from the meeting of December 13th, 2011. Do we have any comments on those?
I move we accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Next item is minutes of the meeting of this past Thursday, January 5th, 2012. Do we have any comments on that meeting or the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next item is SD number 2011-D-10, preliminary final KMO 361 Realty to construct a bank building over existing paved area at 550 East Lancaster Avenue, Radnor, PA, and enhance pedestrian accessibility, circulation, and landscaping in various locations. Is the applicant attendant?
Yes, we are. Good evening. I'm George Brosman, representing the applicant, KMO 361 Realty Associates. Would you like me to proceed?
Yes, please.
This is the St. David Square Shopping Center where the TJ Maxx and Bed Bath & Beyond is. Some of you may remember that we were here in 2011, just last year, 2 times, I believe, in connection with a request to modify a covenant that was in place regarding this property. This property is the old B. Altman's property. B. Altman's closed down the late 1980s, early 1990s, and the site was redeveloped at that time. The B. Altman's building was broken into multiple users. At that same time, a covenant was entered into for a period of 25 years that limited certain things on the property, including that no additional floor area could be built on the property. So we approached the township last year to modify that covenant to allow for this bank, basically, and possibly in addition to another building. We were in front of the commissioners first on that. They referred us to you. We were before you for a good amount of time, and then we tabled the application to have meetings with the community. We had several meetings with the community, both individual members walking around the site, and some major meetings with all of the people on the mailing list from the township. We came back to the Planning Commission, and you were good enough to recommend approval to modify the covenant. We went back to the Board of Commissioners, and they, in fact, agreed to that. We have a PowerPoint that we're going to go through, but as part of the covenant modification process, we were asked by the neighbors to look at some issues that, quite frankly, don't really relate to the proposed bank, but things I think that were of concern to them over the years with regard to the shopping center. The landscape buffers around the edges, the pedestrian accessibility, a lot of attention at the Gennardi's loading dock area. So basically what we agreed with those neighbors and then with the township was that when we come in with a land development plan for either the bank pad or the addition to the building, we will propose at that time a list of other enhancements along with that land development. And those enhancements would include increased landscaping, better pedestrian access and screening, and some modification of the Gennardi's loading dock site. So that's exactly what we did. We filed these land development plans as a preliminary/final plan after consulting with the staff And you will see that the plans not only include the plans for the bank, which will be built over the paving, but they include all of these other enhancements that we agreed to bring before the township. I have with me Ryan Guheen, who's the representative of the property owner. He was here last time. We have Rob Lambert, the site engineer, and Bern Panzak, who's a landscape architect who was instrumental in dealing with some of the landscaping issues. So with that introduction, I was going to turn it over to Rob Lambert. He'll take you through a short PowerPoint, and then he was going to address the review letters that we had.
Thank you.
Good evening. Rob Lambert from Site Engineering Concepts. I have a brief 4 or 5 slide presentation just reviewing the overall property and then this bank specific area. This is an aerial photograph showing the property. The property is outlined in yellow. Lancaster Avenue is across the top of the page. You have the main building, and I'll refer to that as the main building there. On the lower level, you have the TJ Maxx and the Bed Bath & Beyond. Up around in the back area, you have, on an upper level, Gennardi's and Home Goods. You have the Micro Center on the right-hand side, and then the freestanding, there's a 10,000 square foot freestanding building with 4 stores in that on the left-hand side. You have the existing main entrance, which is roughly in the center of the property, and then you have a entrance on the western end of the property. To the top is Radnor Financial Center. The Radnor Hotel is a little bit further east. The Sinkler Building is just to the east on Lancaster Avenue. Along Ivan Avenue, along the right-hand side, we do have a small portion of residential neighbors. Along the bottom is the Radnor Crossing Apartments, and then on the western side is the St. David's Park condominium. This slide shows the existing conditions of the site. The tan, you have existing building A, B, and C. We have a parking field in between building B and Lancaster Avenue and building C and Lancaster Avenue. And then there's also a parking field behind building B up on an upper level. You can see on this slide on the left-hand side or western portion of the site, some of the buffer, is lacking along that western side, and that was one of the issues that we discussed with the neighbors during the amendment of the covenant. Some of that landscaping has actually already been installed, and then in additional, some landscaping has been installed along Ivan. Previous to even this application is just part of property maintenance. This slide shows the proposed improvements. I'm going to work from the outside in, so the bank pad site will be last. Again, it's oriented the same way. Lancaster Avenue is to the top of the page. On the left-hand side, on the western portion, you can see a supplemental buffer, which is going to be going in along the property line, along the St. David's condominium. There's a walkway. It's a little bit hard to see on this plan, but there's actually a proposed walkway from Lancaster Avenue, and I'm going to trace it along that western edge in the landscaped area. When you get up to behind the 10,000 square foot building, I believe it's building A, that will be able to cross the entrance driveway and go on a walkway down to the TJ Maxx or Bed Bath & Beyond. You can also continue up that walkway, and we went around. There's a grouping of 3 or 4 large trees right there that we went around those trees and then back along the edge of the driveway to be able to then cross the driveway. And then there's a walkway. Again, it's hard to see at this scale, but there's a walkway that goes along the edge of that landscaped area to be able to get you to the Gennardi's and Bed Bath & Beyond. The area that I was just referring to is on the left side of Building B, the Gennardi's area. That's actually the Gennardi's loading dock. That was a lot of discussion during some of our neighbors' meetings about trying to buffer that better. And so what we did is we took a two-pronged approach to that. One is we have the buffer out adjacent to the property line. The other piece that we did is these parking spaces actually used to have through islands, so there was very small islands at the end of each of the parking rows, but you could access that parking from the loop road. What we've done is we've closed that off. I'm going to go back one. We've closed that area off and provided an additional layer of landscaping, and then we've provided some additional shade trees in the parking lot to create a layered landscape to help buffer that from the neighbors. On the bottom of the page to the south, we've added additional landscaping along the apartments. I did refer to some of the shade trees that are proposed within the parking lot. We've actually modified the width of some of those islands. The parking spaces back there, a lot of them were larger than needed. They were 10 feet. We've reduced a lot of those down to the 9.5 feet. This property actually is also allowed to have a certain number of 9-foot spaces. So in areas where we were able to enlarge the islands to get more green space for the trees, we've enlarged those islands as much as possible. Going to the bank area, we've enhanced the pedestrian access also on the main entrance area. We're going to provide new striping to get across to the micro center, some additional sidewalks. We've enlarged, there's a pork chop, a turning island. There's a turning island in between the Bed Bath & Beyond and the Micro Center, and we've enlarged that as kind of a place for pedestrian refuge where they're crossing the entrance-exit lanes. They can have a place of refuge there and then cross the next lane over. So we've enhanced that area. We've extended the sidewalk from in front of the Bed Bath & Beyond to that point. The bank pad site, I'm actually going to flip to the next slide. The bank pad site is very similar to what you saw during the covenant amendment process. We've now shown grading and stormwater management for this site, additional landscaping detail, but the whole bulk area of it is the same. We have the proposed bank. There's 3 drive-through lanes and a bypass lane. We've modified a little bit of the parking around here, but it's basically in a existing parking area, so it's an existing paved area that we're redeveloping. And that was the last slide. We were in receipt of David Lay's January 5th review letter, and I don't know if you'd like me to go through it comment by comment. There were a few minor comments that we can address on the plans, but we have no issue with any of his comments as he has listed them.
I think the bold parts of David's letter are what we want to hear about.
Okay. The first bold is number 4, where he listed profiles must be provided for the proposed storm sewer pipes and inlets. Storm sewer profiles have been provided as requested. However, the profiles must be revised to provide pipe crossings. It appears that storm pipes crossing adjacent to inlet 4 will be in conflict. The applicant must address this issue. It's a minor engineering issue. I believe there might be a small conflict. We can adjust the inverts to address that. I don't see that being any issue. 4.1, a post-construction stormwater management plan must be provided, and the plan set in accordance with the section of the ordinance. Then an easement must be provided for stormwater management facilities, must be provided that allows ingress and egress from the public right-of-way, and then a signature block must be provided on the plan. Again, it's 2 notes and providing that easement. We'll work with David Lay on how he wants that easement, if he wants a general easement to get just in and out access, or if he wants a prescribed meets and bounds easement for that. For this site, it's probably more practical to have a general easement just saying that you can have access.
Yeah, I mean, typically we look for a blanket easement, and that does the trick. So.
Number 2, the signature block contained within this section of the ordinance must be provided on the post-construction stormwater management plan. Again, we'll provide that. It's not a problem. 5.2, the proposed sanitary and water service laterals must be shown on the plans. The location of the utility mains are not provided to show the proposed connection. The information must be provided on the plans. A profile must also be provided for the proposed sanitary lateral. We have the mains on the plan, and we'll show the connection details and the profile.
Excuse me 1 second on that. I guess everyone is aware that Giant is taking over this Gennardi store. Do you think it is appropriate, well, I think it's appropriate, that you reach out and find out if they're going to change the particular use and the amount of seats in the restaurant and all that?
I read the same thing you did in the paper. I'm not aware if it's official or...
It's official. Yeah. I don't think they'd go quite that far. But I think someone should reach out to Giant, and in the process of ascertaining the sewage load and all that and the water use issue, it might be good to make sure that there's no substantive or major change coming to the store.
We can take a look into that. Um, 5.3 was requesting additional details and wants each handicapped ramp to be detailed. Again, we have no problem with that. We've included that in our design. We'll just show a detail of each one.
Actually, one comment I wanted to make there actually piggybacks on Skip's comment about Giant. There is a lack of a handicapped access along the Gennardi's curve. I mean, I shop there, so I know what I'm talking about. I can point it out to you later, but it wasn't clear to me where these handicap ramps are, and if anyone's intending to add an additional handicap ramp outside of there's a turnstile entrance there, and there's no handicapped exit. It's a long story. In any event, it wasn't really clear to me where these handicap ramps are planned.
These were around the bank area.
This is just the bank?
Correct.
Okay.
Item number 4, the storm pipe from the proposed inlet connects to an existing inlet on the northern side of the drive aisle. The plans appear to indicate the existing storm pipe enters the same side of the existing inlet box as the proposed pipe. The applicant should clarify how both pipes will enter. Again, that'll be a detail that we'll provide on the structure. Item number 5, although the grading has been revised in this area and the retaining wall has been removed, the area that he's referring to is along the drive-through of the bank where that's graded out. We recommend a guide rail be provided along the 3-to-1 slopes. That's acceptable to the applicant. And then number 6, the township signature blocks on sheet 3 should be deleted, which is no problem.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the beginning, when you first started coming in here, we had questioned the parking requirements on the Gennardi's level because it technically might be a second story, but it's first story because of the access from it. And we were told that it was okay the way it was. When this was initially approved, was that viewed as second story use and the parking was allocated according to second floor use, or does it have the parking requirements that a first floor would require in retail?
The short answer is yes, but I'm going to
Yes to which?
Yes, that it was a second floor, that it was considered a second floor in that previous application.
Initially, when this whole subdivision came in like 25 years ago, it was considered a second floor.
That's right. When I mentioned before that when the B. Altman site was redeveloped, this site, I have the signed plan here, and it clearly indicates that that is considered to be a second floor. It was considered that way for the redevelopment, and then of course Gennardi's came in and got permits and
Based on that, based on B. Altman use.
Not based on B. Altman, based on the redevelopment of B. Altman for the multiple users. So I have the 1991 plan here, signed plan, that basically breaks out the parking calculations and shows that as being treated as second floor,
Okay.
which I assume is why the previous zoning officer, or maybe it's the new zoning officer, I'm not sure, but in David's letter, he indicated that the zoning officer had agreed with us. I had just assumed that maybe
Because of
they
that, that's
found
what I was
this.
wondering, what the
Yeah.
reason was, because if you didn't have that, I think it really needs to be considered as first floor use. But obviously,
Yeah.
if you're not developing that end of it, we're
Right.
kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a two-story building, but I think you're right. The important thing is that that's the way it was treated when it was converted to the multiple users and the Gennardi's and such in the back. So it's in writing on the signed recorded plan.
Okay.
So that's,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
One more question. George, the parking, you're cutting down some parking, but you're restriping, so what is the parking count pre and post?
Do you have that, Rob? we're still in excess of requirements. Rob will give you the number. As you can see from the plan, it's mainly being done to enhance the greenery on the site, which is what the neighbors had requested.
The current required parking is 839 spaces. The existing number of striped spaces is 921. And then the proposed 855 spaces are required, and 888 spaces are proposed.
So when you do the math, it's 33 spaces less than currently are out there, but there's 33 more spaces than are required.
Okay.
I have a few questions. One, on sheet 3, this is actually for Dave, where they did the impervious coverage summaries, it doesn't happen to say what the limits for a planned business are for the district. Do you know those numbers?
Let me check. There might not be a limit, but let me check the zoning.
Okay. And do you know if their calculations, I think they said, I can't read it from here, 52.
Here's an impervious coverage.
52.6% coverage. Do you know if their calculations now include do they include removing the coverage for the steep slopes? Because you made a reference to the steep slopes in your initial letter from December 15th. The steep slopes on the western side. If their calculations include the deductions for the steep slopes.
Right.
That's a question.
Yes. Let me check the requirements for PB, and then I can.
All right, that's one. Let's see. One of the things that wasn't addressed in the parking calculations, Dave, in terms of required, it spoke about the first floor and the second floor, but no one really addressed the parking calculations for the cafe portion of the food store, which is a restaurant, so shouldn't the seats, the number of seats in the cafe in Gennardi's should be calculated, the parking requirement there should be calculated different from a straight 300 square, 1 per 300 or 1 per 200 square feet, correct?
I could address that with my opinion. When that Gennardi's opened, it had all of those amenities, and in my view, and on the plans that I have, it was not considered to be a separate restaurant. In my view, it's an accessory use that's part of the retail store that was permitted by the township. So I don't think you break that out and say that's a separate restaurant. It just goes under the requirements for the store. And I'm quite sure that when that opened, that was the cutting edge store at the time. I remember when it opened, and it was one of the first ones that had that type of those type of amenities. So I just consider that, given the small size of it in relation to the store, it's an accessory use. It's just part of the store, and it goes under that calculation.
Thank you for your opinion, David. It's seating. I don't know if we should be counting it differently, or maybe it's just simply when Giant comes in, if that was an oversight, back in 1991, and that calculation should have been done for seating for the dining area. I've been in several Giants. Many of them have specific dining in there, and they have takeout food, and they are looking to attract clientele to come in and purchase, ready-made food and sit down and eat in their dining area, which for me, that's dining. That's not an accessory used to a grocery store. They're looking to attract that type of business. So I think we need to clarify those parking
Right.
spots.
I mean, I believe I spoke to the zoning officer about this, and he said that the governing factor is the use of a supermarket, and that supersedes that cafeteria area, being as the food provided there is from from the supermarket itself. So it's not a standalone restaurant. But I mean, I can get a written opinion on that, but that's verbally what was explained to me.
Okay, I just think now's the time to clarify that, because they're starting to creep up closer to what they have for required parking and what they have for on-site parking, and which actually brings up to my other question. We haven't even seen the plans for the 10,000 square foot building, the other building that they're planning to build at some point, which was part of the covenant that they asked permission for, which is actually one of my questions. What's the deal with the other 10,000 square foot building you wanted to build? Or was it 5 or 10?
10.
10. It was 10. So, I mean, we only have 33 spaces left now in this property.
It was, what was approved was to have permission from the covenant to add potentially 5,000
5,000, okay.
feet to the 10,000 square feet building. That's not part of our application. They have no tenant for that at the time. If they ever get that tenant and they feel it's something we want to do, they'd have to file for land development approval for that. But significantly, they're incurring all of the costs of the enhancements that they agreed to do. Really, in return for both projects, they're willing to do those now with the bank. And so right now, there is no plan to proceed with that addition. But if they do, they have to come before the township.
I mean, but you can see where I'm going with this. I mean, with another 5,000 square feet planned, they're getting close to their parking. So I think now's the time to really take a look at this and maybe get an opinion on the zoning from the zoning officer about the dining portion of the food store. If Giant is planning to continue to have a dining cafe within the food store.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
And then let me just circle back to your impervious surface question.
Yes.
There's nothing under the PB zoning district
No
that
limits.
limits the
Great,
impervious
okay.
surface.
Excuse me, I'd like to add to, the conversation on the restaurant use within Gennardi's. We'd have to take a look back at the approved plans for when that was converted to a Gennardi's. And Giant coming in would be grandfathered under the seating allocation that would currently exist. Any expansion of that, then we would hold them to the standard for seating with that, and they would be required to provide the required parking.
It's great. I think it'll be important to take a look at what was actually approved back in 91, because my recollection from having shopped there over the years is that seating, it feels like it's expanded somewhat, so it may not be what it was originally back in 91.
And we would definitely take a look at that
Okay.
if that transition were to occur.
Thank you. The other question I have about the parking, I'm trying to get my hands around this. The covenant in 91, and Dave and Peter, the 91, the 25 years for the covenant that allowed for the 9-foot parking spaces, is that going to carry on past the 25 years? The allowability of the 9-foot versus the 9.5-foot parking spots?
Yeah, because the covenant really doesn't. It's not like the covenant is going to be over after 25 years, and then they all of a sudden have to conform with our current regulations. So just because they were allowed to only put in 9-foot wide parking spaces under the covenant doesn't mean that goes away and they'd have to restripe the entire parking lot at the end of those 25 years.
All right, but then I'm a little fuzzy on the numbers here. They were
Can
allowed.
I say something on that point? The covenant did not address the parking space size back then. How that came about was when the site was redeveloped from the B. Altman site, the plans that were recorded, the same plans I've been referring to, stated on there that every space in the lot was 9 feet wide, which at that time was non-conforming. I don't know when they changed the requirement up to 9.5, but the approved plan says that every space on the lot was 9 feet, and that when they redeveloped in 91, they were voluntarily reducing that nonconformity, and they were striping many of the spaces out to 9.5. And there's a note on the plan that I believe the number is 343 of the spaces could remain at 9 feet. This particular application we have further reduces that, but it's basically a non-conforming condition that wasn't related to the covenant. It's just something they were allowed to continue. You're allowed to reduce a nonconformity. You're not allowed to increase a nonconformity.
So the timing was just coincidental that it was 91. It wasn't related to the covenant. It was just related to the development at the time.
Well, the timing wasn't coincidental with the covenant. The covenant was, I wasn't involved then. I just going what I'm reading in the records, but it was offered up by the owner as in conjunction with the redevelopment at the site. I guess there must have been meetings with the neighbors at that time, and maybe the township just felt more comfortable approving this, and the owner was agreeable apparently to say, we'll do this redevelopment, but it's going to be subject to this 25-year covenant. And that covenant addressed various topics, but it did not address the parking and the parking space size. That was a nonconformity that was allowed to continue, albeit at a reduced level.
I'm reading a note from the Delaware County, David, and Peter, if you could chime in here, Delaware County Planning Commission. This is why I'm confused. So I'm just trying to get my hands around the plan started with the ability to have up to 343 spaces at 9 feet wide, although our current code calls for 9.5. But the waiver consideration on page 3 of the Delaware County Planning Commission says, the current plan proposes to further reduce the parking space width for 200 parking spaces from an existing 9.5 width to 9 feet, pursuant to the 1991 plan, and the township should determine whether the plan is consistent with the 1991 development plan approval, or if they create a further nonconformity and require a waiver for the plan approval. I'm trying to get my hands around that comment.
Well, I mean, they're improving their nonconformity. They're not making it less nonconforming than it currently is.
The way I'm reading this, it makes it seem like they want to reduce the width for 200 parking spaces. Is that 200 still keep us under the 343?
Like they're going the other direction.
They're going the other direction.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm trying to understand about this.
Where we have 343 that are now too small. When we finish this, we will only have 200 that are too small, or 217. So we're reducing the degree of nonconformity substantially. So we're going in the right direction, you might say.
Okay, then, David, are you reading the comment I'm reading from Delaware County? Is the wording of that just awkward? It makes it seem as though they're increasing their nonconformity.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the nose there. It's worded kind of awkwardly. I think they're saying the right thing. They just could have worded it a lot better.
Okay. And then the existing, again, referring to the Delaware County Planning Commission comments, the parking spaces at the bank, I think it was on page, well, there's two issues about the bank. The parking is over near the bank. It seems that the parking is going to be too close along the frontage to Lancaster Avenue, too close to the 50-foot setback, which is an existing nonconformity, but since they're going ahead and building, isn't now the time to fix the nonconformity? And, but then there was a calculation about the number of parking spaces at the bank, whether it was 8 or 10. I'm trying to find the note.
I mean, I guess my response would be to fix that nonconformity would cause a jog in the parking structure. I mean, in other words, they'd have to jog their parking area in, which would would limit circulation. In other words, leaving the nonconformity in its current configuration, aids the circulation around the bank. So I think it would be everyone's best interest to keep it at its current location.
Okay, so then leave that one alone. And then I'm just trying, now I can't find the spot about the bank parking spots, the number of parking spots near the bank, whether it's 8 or 10.
I think that was just a graphic issue. There was 10 existing spaces, and we've reduced the 10 to 8. And so it was just, they just wanted us to cross out where it said 10 spaces and make it clear that it was 8 proposed versus 10.
And is 8 proposed within the, let's see, there's 4,000 square feet to the building?
No, it was really just a graphic issue on what was on the plan. It didn't have to do with required parking. It just really had to do, we actually took out 2 spaces to plant a tree.
Susan, are you looking at, on page 2, second paragraph under existing nonconformities? Is that the comment you're talking about?
I was initially, but I'm actually on to the comment about the parking calculation. If the bank building is 4,000 square feet, and the calculation is that we're supposed to have 1 parking space for every 200 square feet, shouldn't the bank have to have 20 spaces, or am I doing my math wrong there?
There's, the way the ordinance is written is it's actually 80%, so it's 80% of gross floor area, so the parking unit is based on 3216, so 3,216 square feet, so 16.1 spaces would be required for the bank.
And you have 8 over in that area?
No, the 8 was just, again, the parking field is it's all the parking numbers is where that 8, or where the 16 goes into. The 8 that they were referring to, if you can see where I'm pointing with the mouse, see where that tree is, there's actually 2 additional spaces that are existing in that location, and so there was a row of 10 there. The way the graphic was written when it was drafted is it said 10 spaces, and then we had 8 with a circle around it. And so what it was the existing was 10 spaces, and the proposed is 8.
My last question about the parking calculations has to do with the area over near the Micro Center building is not striped. Are those, without the whole lot being striped, the whole property, and accounting for where are the 9-foot spots, where are the 9.5-foot spots, how are we doing the counting to know that we have the right number of parking spots on this property?
Well, based on the dimensions between the planting islands, let's say, if there's 9 spaces depicted on here, we verified that there's 87.5 feet between the planting islands. And that's how we came up with the that's how we cross-checked their parking to verify that they have the required parking.
So has the applicant indicated all the areas in which they have these 9-foot spots versus the 9.5?
Yes, they're denoted on the plans.
Okay. This is just a side question for the applicant. I noticed that there's a 10,000 square feet for lease in the Micro Center building. Is that the bank you're advertising for? Or, I mean, you just losing space in Micro Center?
Maybe Ryan could answer that. I don't think it's the bank. It may be the tenant is looking for a subtenant. Do you know, Ryan? He's telling me the tenant is looking for a subtenant.
All right, and we are sure that they'll have to come back when they want to develop the 5,000 square feet, right? Yes? I think that was all my questions. The biggest one is if we can clarify this issue of the cafe in the food store. Thank you.
Can you just refresh my memory on the sidewalks on Lancaster Avenue that exist today?
There's a sidewalk along our frontage that runs basically from where the Micro Center is, down the driveway, all the way along Lancaster Avenue, and then it actually goes all the way to the western portion. There's another commercial property right to the west, and I believe the sidewalk goes right across there also.
So heading to the east, there's no real way for pedestrians to get to the center?
Headed to the east, actually, is there a sidewalk on the east? Yeah, actually, there is a sidewalk that runs along Lancaster Avenue all the way down to the corner.
Thank you.
I do have one more question about the flow. How's the driving flow supposed to work around the bank? Coming in, and it looks like you'll have a pretty sharp turn coming there and going pretty sharp to the right to get into the drive-through, or what's the plan of how the traffic flow is supposed to work with the bank in that location?
There's actually 20-foot radiuses there. If you came in the main entrance, you'd make a right, you'd make another right to go down here, and then a right to turn into that area right there. There's, again, at this scale, it's a little bit deceiving, but if you look at the parking spaces are all, rounded off 10 feet wide. So there is between this travel lane and this edge, 2 parking spaces plus an island, so there's 25 feet in there, so your car will, be straighten out and then make another turn.
Is that it for the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
One more question about landscaping. I recall from the first time this was before us that Dan Malloy said that there had been a series of trees dying in the islands because either the islands were the wrong size, or the plant material was the wrong plant material. And I'm looking at this drawing, and I'm assuming some of it is existing and some of it is the new plantings. There seem to be a half dozen to a dozen islands that have no plants.
You're referring to this area here?
Yeah, and then over in front of the home store.
Over here?
Yeah. Is that a deliberate choice or inadvertent omission, or are they going to be planted? Or
I think what you're seeing is some of these islands have lights in them. I'm not sure about each and every one of these, but there's been an effort to stay up on the tree planting. I think if you go out there, you'll see, each one of these are smaller, newly planted trees. Again, I believe that at least one of these has a light. That probably has a light. That one has a light. That one has a light. So there's sort of a crisscrossing of lights, and we wouldn't want to put the shade trees in there. We were focused on certain areas. Of course, this area back in the Gennardys was our main area of focus. There was a pretty concerted effort to replant the islands in front of Micro Center, as evidenced by the existing condition, the light-colored trees in those areas. But our focus was certainly the Gennardys field and the parking area not the parking, the Gennardy loading dock area, as far as the parking was concerned.
Since we have you standing here, I noticed that the new plantings around the proposed bank are much more extensive at the ground level. Instead of sod, which I see mentioned on a lot of the other specs, there's all sorts of daylilies and everything else. Is there any opportunity to continue to upgrade the islands where the shade trees would prevent lights from working, but certainly ground cover would look a lot more attractive?
Yeah, and I think my recollection is that there are a variety of shrubs and grasses, as I recall, are.
I remember seeing sod in 4 or 5 locations.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why there couldn't be, over time, additional maintenance plantings going in those islands.
I just meant instead of sod.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anyone else from the Planning Commission have any questions? At this time, I'd like to invite the public to come up and speak if anyone has any questions or comments. Just please remember to state your name.
Jim Schneller. I live at 430 East Lancaster Avenue, which is about 1,000 feet from the location. I shop it regularly, and I've commented before. I'm not going to repeat anything I said at the comments on the change to the covenant, except where it relates to this. And I'll try to be brief. And I had an exhibit I wanted to hand out, which is simply a enlargement of the Radnor zoning map. This is the zoning map as of, I think, 2007. To my knowledge, no amendments were made at this location.
Could you just put it on display for everyone?
Yes.
And
I have some copies here. Saved one for the table.
you just say, well, thanks.
Is Jim here? Jim, can we have an enlargement?
Could you just, yeah, thanks.
Thanks. I wanted to point out that if you see in this PB district, Planned Business District, there is a buffer green stripe surrounding what is, this would be the location at hand. This is the Radnor Crossing. This is I still call it the Sears Building and the Radnor Corporate Complex and the hotel. And surrounding the entire district, at some point, I guess when this particular map was drawn up, there was a strip drawn carefully, and it is in conjunction with the R1 district at Old Radnor Town at the intersection of Madsen Ford and Radnor Chester. So since it's the same color as the R1, I believe the intent of those who promulgated this map was that the buffer stand in addition to the land division and land improvement chapters and the zoning law. And I presume it was for some intent to keep an extra buffer from the residential neighborhoods, because otherwise a map would never have been changed. They would have relied on the ordinance. All of this is to say that you are beholden to hold these applicants to the most expansive visage available. And the first point I'd like to make is the 100-foot setback. I hope they're complying. There's also, however, a 50-foot setback from the drive, depending how whether you classify that drive as a street or not. I think in the case of a PB, it could be viewed as a street. I see, of course, they put in plantings. But I especially wanted to point this out as evidence. And I don't know if it's evidence of a 1991 intent, because I haven't been able to find out when the map was drawn up. Somebody knows. It was at the time that the zoning code was really overhauled.
Actually, as I recall, when this was changed, I believe it was a golf course, when it went to be Altman, that edge was put around it to keep anything from actually being built on those edges, to keep it as an open space around it, in addition to whatever would be going on there. And I think it has to keep, I think the thought was to keep building out of that area on there. And it's come up in several instances. It hasn't been changed, and they've kept it as a buffer, like an additional buffer with it. But I believe it occurred when this was changed from a golf course to the B. Altman's, which was before my time, by the way, just in case.
When the covenant, at the time the covenant and the plan was put together, I believe that it stands as one of the integrated plans that the zoning code refers to when it refers to planned business districts. And I think it would be a simple matter for the engineer or you to review and to find out, in addition to the covenant and the plans, what exactly was intended. And this comes into points now that are raised regarding the second story interpretation, the 9.5-foot issue. All of this, I think, relates to something that was an integrated plan. And since it was a plan of that nature, I think that Section 280-132 applies. I think that in Section A1, this is not only subject to review by you, but I think because it's a plan, because it involves a second addition to that pad on the other side, it should be held integrated, and it should be brought before the Board of Commissioners in addition to the covenant change under 280-132-1. I know this is mostly the zoning code I'm referring to, but I'm not talking about any measurements or anything, just the fact of the approvals.
I think it does go before the commissioners. The commissioners make the decision on what happens here.
But in addition...
We advise.
Right.
So the commissioners will make a decision.
Well, I intend to point out to them that they and you, I would think, have a higher threshold to meet because of the existence of Section 280-132 and the fact that the planned business section refers to this one. Also, I think the Board of Commissioners has admitted by taking such a hard look at that covenant that there is some kind of plan. I tried to extract out of some of the longer members of the board, and I got a lot of blank stares. So if there is something in the covenant about this, and as we know, the covenant is very specific in what exists for 14 years. After that time, there's quite a bit that goes on. And I don't think there should be any piecemeal approach, in other words. Down to particulars, if I could mention that there is a 12-auto stacking requirement for a bank. That's under Section 103B11. And I don't see a 12-auto stacking space there, and I don't think a parking lot should be permitted to stand up to compensate. I think the parking lot is going to be maxing out, and it's no time to let that compensate. I note that parking, loading, and service areas, of which there are some even on a bank, have to be 50 feet from the street or the highway. I'm not sure that's been met, and there's no provision in that particular section for a buffer compensating for it. As to the 20% figure in section 280-60, I don't think that the 20%, 80% calculation should include this, once again, this adder strip. In addition, in fact, this particular section is about a 5% grade, as is this one. Oh, thank you. That would be the R1 border along St. David's condominium on the east and along Ivan on the west. They're both a very steep grade. So I don't think they should be permitted in the calculations for that reason, on top of the fact that this is, I state, an additional buffer, not just the PB buffer or whatever is setting that norm. And these are important because, as I complained at the covenant section of this discussion, Radnor has always depended on the appearance of this mall. And it shouldn't be changed, and it will be altered, and it will be permanent. And the fact that people are not here to talk about it, it means simply that they're raising children and otherwise quite busy and concerned with their own particular duties. I have taken this on because I live so close to it, but also because I've lived here for 40 years, and I see the possibilities and the amazing features of Radnor have, by chance and by the good work of government, stayed that way. Finally, if the parking calculations are based on the second floor, I ask you to revise that. It's never too late to go along with the code, and so be it. Likewise, for the 45% landscape buffer, once again, I don't think it should include that R1 border that's in addition. And my favorite complaint, as you know by now, but this time it's in writing, in section 105C, there is a requirement for a traffic study. And that is, of course, taking into consideration especially the other pad and the overall characteristic of the area, and the fact that this particular PB zone, which I think has really always been looked at as a singular piece, has that large new development scheduled for 200 Radnor Chester. I think traffic study is important, and with the Blue Route having opened 5 years ago, the place needs a brand new look. So under 105C, the language even says, otherwise there shall be no approval, or otherwise there shall be no construction unless PennDOT approves. So it provides for a traffic study and an approval. And finally, 105 in section F. 105 is one of the sections regarding general requirements for all development, all zoning. In 105F, there is no parking, loading, or service within the front yard setback. Here, it's a thorny or a hazy question, but the front yard setback could be said to be 100 feet. And I'm really interested in just having the law complied with, and I am disappointed that the covenant was changed. However, these folks have their property, and I wish them luck. And in fact, I'd like to thank them. There's been so much talk about landscaping. I know some of those trees in trouble, others aren't. I always figured it was the salt, and they've always planted nicely in the springtime. Let me run through this one more time. Yes, the measurements don't appear to be complete on the plan. I think you should table, especially in light of what I've said regarding the 20%, 80%, and some of the parking issues. It's definitely fit for a tabling because the plan apparently hasn't given you the proper calculations.
But David, could you address the zoning issues or zoning compliance and traffic study and some of the points that Jim
Well,
brought
I
up?
mean, the traffic study, I think we talked about this last week. An addition has to be over 20,000 square feet, I think.
I think 50,000
Is it 50?
for commercial.
It's definitely not 4,000. So a traffic study would not be warranted for an addition such as this. As far as the zone calculations, I mean, you know, I can't sit here and redo them. All I can say is we've been through the plans. We agree with their calculations. You know, we agree with their parking calculations. I mean, we'll take, again, Kevin and I will take a look at the cafe to see if we look at that any differently. But otherwise, I mean, we do agree with what's been shown on the plans.
Could I clarify one issue about the zoning? Because I don't see the calculations on the sheets for 280/60 area, lot area and building area, where not more than 20% of the total area of the tract can be devoted to buildings. And 45% has to be landscaping, and that's in zoning. And the landscaping has to be, that's part of 255. But I don't see the calculation about that this is limited to, that the tract has no more than 20% of it devoted to buildings. Because when I was talking about impervious coverage earlier and you were saying there's no limit, indirectly there is a limit through 280/60 and through 255.
Right. There's a building coverage limit, and they do list it under the zoning schedule. They indicate that the proposed building coverage is 11.2%.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
I didn't see that. And then the landscaping has to be 45% under saldo. And that's exclusive of the areas in the public right-of-way.
Correct. But again, we'll cross-check that. I think we did check that, but either way, they're not, if it is an existing nonconformity, they're not making it any worse because they're adding more green space as opposed to adding more impervious space. So it's becoming greener than it is in the current condition.
We didn't make note of that as an existing nonconformity, did we?
No, because I don't believe it is. I'm just saying if by chance it would be,
Okay.
that they're making the nonconformity better.
Right, so that's one other thing that would need to be verified here in terms of the saldo requirement.
Susan, on that chart, all the improvements total 52%, 52.6. So I don't know if that's a correct assumption, but the rest of it is not
Yes,
improved.
I just noticed that myself. So it's 48% green space.
It's not concrete or walks or drives or buildings or overhangs. So I would go with grass.
What about Mr. Schneller's comment about the R1 buffer? Does that get calculated in the plan, in the zoning for this, under the PV district?
I'll have to take a look at that R1 strip. I'm not sure we took a look at that directly.
Okay, thanks.
So
Why wouldn't that be included in? I'm saying it should be included in because we've had other situations where properties have had split zoning on them, and it's developed in the manner in which the majority of the zoning is, or where the building is in relation to, say, R1 or R3. But you take the overall property, since it's under one deed, as a percentage of impervious and calculating that out. So I don't think the fact that that has an R1 buffer around it, or maybe buffer is not the correct word, but split zoning of R1 around it, that should affect the percentages of impervious to non-impervious, or the way you split up the property and you count a portion of it as one way and a portion of it as another way. It's developed as commercial, so you go by those numbers.
No, that makes sense. I hear what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else from the public have a comment or a question? Okay, at this time, members of the board, have any comments, questions, suggestions? Ken, you want to start on your end and we'll work our way down?
No, I think they've addressed all the concerns we put in the first pass at this. And, I think that the fact that the use is staying the same that it is with the Giant and the Trinari's, I think is fine. I'm okay with the way that the second floor is calculated and the parking ratios are calculated. I think they've addressed everything we've asked them to.
I mean, I would agree with Ken with the caveat that I think that they're getting close, much closer than I think we thought they were with regard to their parking limits and even their impervious coverage when you look at the 45. If it's truly at 52.6, they may not have the numbers for parking or impervious to do that second building that we discussed at the covenant without, making some adjustments. But, I do think that they've largely addressed the issues, and assuming Peter and David get us an answer about the dining seats and clarify a few of those things.
As far as the dining goes in the Gennardi's, you have to look, unless I see something where it was not grandfathered in. Everything I've heard tonight and everything I've seen is, this is an existing development, so it needs to be treated differently than virgin ground. And as far as I know, every portion of this existing development has been previously approved. And as such, they're really not making any changes to that pre-approval. The Giant, Gennardi's converting to Giant, it's the same use, it's just a different owner. The placement of the bank, it being placed entirely on blacktop within the existing area that was previously been developed. So a lot of these issues, which would be germane if we were dealing with a virgin area, are not germane here because it's previously developed. There's been previous requirements that they've met, and the new requirements, the changes, they're grandfathered to. So as far as, if the Gennardi's has gotten a permit and been built and approved at what's being proposed here, we can't go back and now say, well, we're going to apply new standards to you. It's just not something we're allowed to do under the law. The same, just like, where the parking spaces are, if the parking spaces currently are 8 feet off the right-of-way of East Lancaster, and they're supposed to be 50, well, when they were built, they were approved. Or if they were built illegally, we've signed off on them. So, they're grandfathered in. And as far as the 5,000 square foot building to be built, obviously, when they want to build it, they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to prove that they haven't exceeded the parking. I believe the impervious surface is not going to change because everything we've seen regarding that building is it's being built over existing parking lots, so the impervious surface is not going to change. As with the R1 buffer around the site, that R1's buffer has been around this site since it's been built. They're not, as far as I can tell, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, they're not intruding into that buffer in any way or any new way. Once again, it's all grandfathered.
Yeah, I'd have a bigger problem of this project only if they weren't so heavy on the parking already, and how that second floor is interpreted, and how Gennardi's food service. If they were tight now, there'd be an issue. But there's still, even with the proposed development, there's ample parking to be over what the code requires.
Skip?
My question, Peter, is that if Giant takes over the store, which I think they will, and they put in 100 seats in a restaurant, is that an expansion of a use that they would have to then prove they had adequate parking for?
I think in this day and age, especially since I don't believe our zoning ordinance defines exactly what a retail store is or what a grocery store is, you go to any large grocery store anywhere and they all have these sorts of food service areas. And so maybe 15, 20 years ago, that wasn't a part of that grocery store use. It's become a part of that grocery store use now. And since we haven't created our own definition of a grocery store use, and within that definition defined whether it includes, sit-down eating or not, we kind of have to accept these changes in this sort of use throughout the industry. So that's a long way of saying
No.
No, probably. I mean, yeah, eventually if they put in 1,000 seats, yeah, eventually you kind of say, well, wait a second, and maybe 100 seats, that might be approaching it. But the problem is we, it's a giant, and I hate to say this, it's a giant gray area. Is there some point where they go too far? Yeah. But I couldn't tell you exactly where that point is.
It's playing the hypothetical out. If it was 51% of the retail space of the store, wouldn't that be?
I would think that would be too far, too much. I mean, the way you look at it is, you look at grocery stores now. They do a lot. It's a huge retail area, but they also have many times pharmacy, banking, sit down eating, takeout eating, as part of their total experience. But all those extras are really accessory to the main retail grocery store. If it comes to a point where the selling of groceries is secondary to the selling of everything else, then maybe you have something new and something different and something that's not allowed.
Okay. I do also recall from, I think, the first time they came in that the next use that's proposed when they add on to that separate little building is a restaurant.
Correct, yes. Yes.
Parking.
Kathy?
I think we need to look at what's before us, not what may be or what may possibly be or what was before. The plan was approved years ago for B. Altman, and then the plan was approved for the changes. And they're, quite truthfully, I feel off the table. We're looking at the bank. We've got a lot of improvements out of this. I think they've done more in landscaping than they probably really needed to do on this to get approval for the bank. And I feel that I'm comfortable and recommending approval to this plan tonight. I don't really see how we can tie the food thing into it because it is an accessory use, as Peter mentioned. I agree with everything Peter said in that. So I think we need to look at what's before us, not what will be. And if that other 5,000-foot building comes in and it is a restaurant, then we take a hard look at the seating then and the parking and so forth. But we can't imagine what that will be at this point and decide this plan on that because that one's not before us and it may never be before us. And I can't really imagine with all the nice restaurants in Wayne why hundreds of people would go to Gennardi's or Giant's food court and eat, quite truthfully. Maybe grab a sandwich.
Radnor High School students are walking over there. They're walking, and some of them are driving over there every day.
Well, that's an in-and-out type of thing, but still.
Driving.
Okay, but perhaps they don't have the shopping, requiring, there may not be a lot of people shopping at that point where there's a lot of cars there too. But I think we need to look at what's before us on this and what we can legally get at. And I think we've legally gotten at it, quite truthfully.
I don't think we're trying to make it a precondition to approval. I think we're raising the issue. And if Giant doubles or triples the dining area,
then we need to
that's
look
an
at
issue.
it.
It's still an issue, whether it's covered in our code or not.
Well, that's the problem with our code in a lot of areas.
If there are no other comments, would anybody like to make a motion?
I would like to recommend approval of the plan.
And believe it or not, I would like to second.
Yeah, but did we hear everybody in the audience that wanted to talk first?
I believe we did, but I'll ask again. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to step up? Okay.
Go on.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda for this evening. Yeah, thanks. Is preliminary Cabrini College to construct parking structures at 610 Eagle Road. So you may begin when you're ready.
Joanne Seameister for Cabrini College. Last we were here, I believe it was September, We made an initial presentation, and since that time, there have been changes to the plan. There's been a reduction on the footprint of the garage. We've convened another meeting with the neighbors. We have also met with representatives of PennDOT, as well as the Township's Shade Tree Commission, among others. We believe that the preliminary plan meets with SALDO requirements. We're not requesting any variances, special exceptions, or any waivers. At this time, I'd like to introduce our team. Howard Holden, Director of Facilities for Cabrini, who will provide an overview of the project and any changes, highlighting changes from our last appearance.
Yes, good evening. My name is Howard Holden. I'm Director of Facilities for Cabrini College. We were last here before you in September. Since that meeting, as Joanne stated, there's been several things that we have gone through. We've had 3 neighbor meetings. In fact, we've had one recently. The overall opinion of the neighbors was they were in favor of what we're doing. We've had meetings with PennDOT, and since the entrance and exit from this facility is planned to be off of Eagle Road, and PennDOT has indicated that they are in agreement with our placement. They're looking at this as what they call a collector site to pull traffic off of King of Prussia Road, bring it onto Eagle, and get the cars off the major highways.
Excuse me, now, could you, do you have one of these plans, and maybe you could just point that out to us?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And actually, if I could mention to back there in the little office that makes this work, our screens aren't working.
Do you think we ought to do one of the proposed plans?
Thank you.
Yeah, we got it. Do we go? I'll give you the existing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, where the arrow is where we are planning to bring the parking structure to. And again, the entrance and exit from that parking structure will be just about here. And PennDOT is in accord with the site distances from this curve and from the existing Eagle Road exit. We've also agreed with PennDOT that we will be closing that Eagle Road exit for nothing other than emergency vehicle access. Both fire and police have requested that they have access. That's their closest entrance to the campus. Last time we were here, the township engineer did recommend preliminary approval. However, the commission tabled the issue and requested we go back and revisit the site and to see if there were other locations on our campus that could house this parking structure. Over the past several months, we have done an exhaustive study to see if there is indeed other places on campus. And we've determined that this still is the best site, not just because of the site, but because of a balance of issues on campus. As you can see in this particular slide, we've got setbacks, steep slopes, and watersheds. It limits our buildable space on campus, and our goal is to reduce the surface parking that has been allowed to proliferate on campus and make the campus a more pedestrian-friendly campus. Right now, the center of campus contains many cars on its main driveways, and the students, faculty, staff like to use those driveways as any campus would as casual walking areas from one building to another. That is not permissible in a comfortable way right now due to the amount of parking that is in the center of campus. This is not unusual standard these days for higher education. I think Villanova was just here before you not too long ago, with the same sort of philosophy, is to get the cars out of campus and give it back to the students and the faculty and staff. Okay, with that, I think it'd be best for me to, at this point, turn it over to Martin Pesch with Wallace Robertson Todd, who has worked on the master plan and who has revisited this as you requested we do so when we came here in September. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Martin Pesch. I'm with WRT. I'll take you through sort of a dozen or so slides in this PowerPoint presentation, give you a little bit of the background, a couple of the overview slides we had in the previous presentation, and then we'll finish with the proposed plan, and we'll highlight the changes that we're proposing from the last time we were here. And then if there's further questions, we have a series of slides also of the drawings that were actually submitted the second round. As Howard Holland mentioned, a couple of clear goals and givens for the master plan. First of all, in terms of the total population, the campus plan, and therefore even the proposed plan that this project is part of, is designed to accommodate approximately 1,500 full-time undergraduate students. Currently, there are about 1,300 students, full-time undergraduate on campus. The maximum on this campus in terms of student population was in 2007, where there were about 1,745 students on campus. So again, the campus plan is not accommodating growth, a little bit of growth from current population, but actually a reduction of the high number of 1,745. The parking goal, and I'll explain sort of the detail, the breakdown of this, is to get about 1,050 spaces on campus. There are currently 920 spaces striped on campus. The campus plan is designed to work within the current property lines, as you see in front of you, and within the current zoning regulations as well. So those were sort of the givens as we got into the master plan. This is not a flat piece of land. This is not a site without restrictions when you consider buildable areas for projects and also for this parking, for this gateway structure that we're proposing. The graphic that you see on the screen talks about the setbacks, which is the light gray zones running around the property. You see in blue the stormwater management areas where stormwater is collected. And there are setbacks, riparian corridors along some of those. The light green areas on the map are generally the areas of the natural steep slopes on campus. And I'll click to the next one. This is showing some of the existing open spaces. You see the rectangles represent the athletic fields. In the core of campus, this is really sort of the estate landscape and the area that we are proposing become car-free, pedestrian-friendly. There are a number of other natural zones that are sort of part of the image of the campus, like the landscape along the entrance road off of King of Prussia, which is running to your right on the screen. And you see these green ovals and circles. The proposed campus plan is proposing that in some cases, surface parking lot areas like the one between the existing athletics center and Grace Hall and the large parking lot behind the academic buildings in the core are partially converted back to green space, so that eventually this campus will feel not in a sea of parking like a shopping center, but a series of connected landscapes that the buildings sort of envelop. I want to point out the area here, which is the larger green space. This is an area both of steep slopes and an area of stormwater management and a natural resource area. And you'll see in one of the diagrams that one of the proposed buildings is actually focused and aligning that space as well. The dotted line in the center of campus and the arrows that are connecting the two buildings are connecting the two historic resources on campus, the mansion to the south and Grace Hall, the formal stables building, to the north. The other blue dotted line that you see here is really an indication of a proposed garden walk that will run through these places. The areas where the red dotted arrows are located currently act as vehicular roads and act as roads where cars are parked as well. The proposal is to actually leave the roads in, make them pedestrian access, but remove all the parking in the core of campus, which means that the cars really would drop off at these red circles at the core. You see by this graphic that when you locate the athletic fields that are there, the sort of the green areas that highlight this campus, the core, the riparian rights, there are not many big pieces of flat land available on this campus, which is why, which is one of the key reasons why the parking structure is focused on the southern edge of campus. This next slide is showing the long-range plan that is being proposed. The campus master plan includes, in addition to making the core of the campus more pedestrian and actually enhancing the landscape, a number of enhancements to existing buildings, meaning renovations and some adaptive reuse, but it also includes a couple of new structures. There are 3 proposed within the next 10 years and shown on this plan. They are mostly focused on student life on this campus. So next to the Dixon Center, which is the larger gray area, the athletic center, is a small addition proposed, mostly to deal with lockers and storage and to satisfy current programming needs. The biggest of the new buildings that's being proposed, which is being proposed to replace some existing impervious or surface parking, is a new student center. And as you can see, that will be connected with green space back to Dixon Center and will ultimately then be connected to the core of campus. The other proposed building in the long-range plan is either a freestanding building or in a building that might be connected to Founders, which is the existing academic building, which will be a newly proposed dining hall that will again take advantage of the green space that surrounds it. So those are the new building projects in addition to the Gateway project, the long-term project that are being proposed. All of these projects are being done to make sure that Cabrini maintains its competitive edge amongst its peer institutions. You will see this again as a move that many colleges are making to enhance the experience of students and faculty on campus. The next graphic shows there are total 952 parking spaces. We are proposing in dark gray, I think it shows up on the graphic, so it's the dark gray area like this one that's surrounded by the dotted line, and this area which is behind Founders, and also a certain number of parking spaces that are lining the road that connects the residential structures. Those surface parking spaces are proposed to be removed. Some of the land on which the parking spaces sit will be used for new buildings in the future. Others will be removed to provide pathways and paved areas that connect, like in this case the athletics building, back to the core of campus, and others will be removed for green space. And we're doing that with about 698 parking spaces. So here is the proposal for parking, and this is the first graphic that indicates the footprint of the proposed Gateway project on Eagle Road at the bottom of the page. As Howard Holden mentioned, there are currently 3 entrances to the campus. There's one on Upper Gulf at the top of the sheet, an existing one on King of Prussia Road on the right, and then the left bottom, the one that's colored yellow here, is also an existing access. We are proposing to still add a new entrance off of Eagle Road, which is the green dot where the cursor is now, and we're proposing to eliminate the other existing entrance on Eagle Road and reduce it to be used only for maintenance and for emergency vehicles. This is one of the moves that we made after we talked to neighbors and had some other input. So the total tally of parking spaces is, you see here, the existing number of spaces, 952. We are relocating or eliminating about 698 parking spaces, surface parking spaces. There are parts of the surface parking that are being relocated. You see here in blue, in 2 locations, there's a little bit of an expansion of existing surface parking, and then the gateway structure will provide a little bit over 710 parking spaces for a new total of a little bit over 1,050 spaces total on campus. What I need to note, and I think that this is part of the parking calculation matrix that shows up as part of the application, that the new parking number, the 1,066, accommodates the existing 952, which we know are not in conformance with the other buildings. But then the difference between the 952 and the 1,066 provides the, as per the zoning code, required parking for the new structures that we are proposing in this plan. So for the 3 structures that I just mentioned.
Excuse me, it is sufficient exactly, or it exceeds the requirements based on the new structures?
Slightly exceed.
Okay.
And the new structures being the new campus center, the new dining room center, and the new athletic center addition.
That's correct.
And those, the 101 spots that you are allocating for that, that's...
No, this is the 101 spots in this table are really the surface, the new surface parking lots that we're proposing. So maybe the terminology is wrong. Future projects meaning future surface parking lots. So we're taking some of the surface parking and we are rebuilding it in a different location.
At what point? When you go to build the other buildings, or after the gateway parking structures built? At what point are you planning to add those 101 spaces in?
When we remove the larger surface parking lots in the core of campus.
After the gateway structure's built?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Could I ask how many employees and professors you have?
Excuse me a second before we get started with that. Is there any more?
Yeah,
Looks
there's a
like
couple
you
more
have it.
slides, and maybe we'll answer some of those questions.
I see you are. Okay.
This is, so here's the distribution in the gateway parking structure, or what we think the proposed organization will be, because that was a question that was raised as well. We think that about half of the spaces in the proposed gateway parking structure would be for the residences. So they would be sort of a long-term use. Those cars wouldn't leave, would come and go every day. And that about half, about 360, would be commuters, so either students or faculty that would come on campus and then leave at the end of the day. Currently, and you see here the distribution of the on-campus parking permits that are issued. They issue right now a couple of few more spaces or more permits than there are actually spaces, because these people are never all on campus at the same time. At peak time, even with the 952 spaces existing, there are always 20 to 30 spaces that are not occupied. And so you see how many permits are being issued for residential, for the residences on campus, the commuter students, some special needs permits, and faculty and staff. The graphic is a little bit complicated with lots of sort of pieces, but I think, and Howard Holden touched on this as well, the location of the garage in this project and all of the other projects, we are trying to balance preserving the natural environment and landscape, the stormwater management systems, where the immediate neighbors are located in reference to the campus functionality in terms of where people walk on campus and how you approach the campus as well, traffic management in general, the proximity to the historic structures, of course. We would not locate buildings too close to these, any building. And then in terms of overall impervious coverage, even with a number of new structures that we're proposing in the long-term plan, by adding a structured parking and removing some surface parking in green area, we're able to balance in the long-term plan the impervious area so that roughly we're not increasing the impervious area on campus with this overall move. There were some additional traffic counts done. This graphic indicates the traffic numbers at one of the peak hours, which is the afternoon traffic. And what these numbers represent, for instance, on King of Prussia Road, the red numbers are the existing count. So the first number is the existing count as per the study. The second red number is what is being projected sort of in the near future, even without this project, just because of sort of general development in the area. And then the blue number, in this case the 1150 on King of Prussia Road, is the projected anticipated number of vehicles after the Gateway project is put in place. One thing I need to note is that because the existing Eagle Road entrance is being proposed to be decommissioned or demoted, for the traffic analysis that was not known, which is why there are still 10 cars going in and out of that particular entrance. But that would go to 0, of course, in the ultimate one. And you see here the green dots would be the permanent entrances to the campus. And you could see some of the numbers on that map. So as Howard Holden mentioned, some of the traffic will be removed actually from King of Prussia Road and will enter the campus into the Gateway project. And that's why those numbers change. So the traffic on the eastern portion of Eagle Road will increase slightly and King of Prussia Road will decrease slightly. This is the change in footprint. At the top was the original configuration where we had broken the garage and articulated in sort of 3 components with daylit atrium areas. The current proposed plan has been reduced and been compressed. We've left in one of the accents, which is online with the historic mansion, which is where people that park here would come into the campus. And what you also can see is at the top, the proposed entrance road off of Eagle Road, after discussions with PennDOT, has been shifted slightly to the west to improve sight lines and still have sufficient distances. And again, that is depicted in the lower configuration and is now part of the final plan. For those of you who may not seen the section, this garage is not sitting on a flat plate. It's sunken into the existing grades. To the left at the top of the hill is the historic mansion. Eagle Road is on the right. The proposed parking structure is set back 120 feet, approximately 120 feet from the existing right-of-way, which is the edge of Eagle Road. And you see how the structure sits into the existing grades. We had this image at the last presentation. This is a massing diagram. It's really a view from Eagle Road showing on the left some of the existing landscape that is remaining and how the entrance road is coming off of it and then going into the end of the project. We have not had an opportunity to advance any of the thinking about the elevations and the garage pending outcome of your recommendation and the next steps. That was it in terms of the presentation portion.
Anyone from the board have any questions?
Could we go back to the traffic count map? Just to clarify, the future numbers are the blue-green or the green number?
A little hard to see. Huh? The future numbers are the numbers that are in a gray or light blue below the horizontal line at each of the measured locations.
Okay. So if I read the Eagle Road numbers the right way, the current traffic load is 915 to 931. Peak is 931. The red numbers in the far, near the WRT logo.
Correct. On the western part, west of our future maintenance driveway,
Right.
the existing counts are 915 cars. Using just the underlying growth, those numbers would go to 931. And with the proposed development, we predict that there would be 938.
Post-development or with growth post-development? or-
With growth post-development.
Okay.
And it's not just growth, though. Wouldn't some of that projection be because people are going to be coming and going on Eagle Road to get to the shortest possible way to get to the garage?
Correct. Based on our counts, it appears that there's going to be just a slight reduction there. If you look at the existing numbers, and what I did is I took all the traffic. I don't know if you've looked at traffic studies. They have every turning movement has a different number to it, and what we've done is taken those numbers basically at each turning movement and tried to simplify it for purposes of presentation. If you look at Upper Gulf Road, there's 114 that basically come into the property from the north, and there's 206 that come in from the south. So 2/3 of our traffic is coming from the King of Prussia Eagle intersection area. And what we're predicting actually is that 149 of those trips are going to now go to our proposed driveway. If you look at the section, there's a section on Eagle Road. We have 902 cars predicted there, and 42 of those cars will be related to Cabrini.
Is this for a very short time interval? I mean,
This is the PM peak hour. I believe
okay,
it's
it's a
6 to 7.
single hour. It's a single hour.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just the numbers, I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert on traffic. The numbers seem odd. I see a reduction of 86 coming in off of King of Prussia Road, 149 going out on Eagle. I don't see any change on Upper Gulf, so just odd. The other thing is, go ahead.
I was going to say, we looking at it, and you try to look at the redistribution of it, we didn't predict any change on the people accessing off of Upper Gulf.
But there's 700 spaces, and half of them are commuters. And the existing permits that you're talking about, how you would estimate the use of the site doesn't anticipate 200 more students either, right? Do these bottom numbers here on Eagle or the entrance and exit, the 149 number at the green dot, does that contemplate the increase in students?
This was based on current. It was based on the current numbers, redistributing the current traffic.
But you're anticipating or trying to grow the institution by 200 students.
It's a reduction from the previous peak, but
But these numbers aren't the previous peak.
correct.
Right. And it's odd that there's no change in Upper Gulf Road, and you're losing 2 lots that are serviced probably logically more by Upper Gulf than King of Prussia.
The traffic counts show that it's serviced by King of Prussia, or two-thirds of the traffic serviced by King of Prussia.
I mean, to me, it seems that although you have to do traffic studies, that this seems slightly flawed. When you drop 700 spaces in one little spot, I have a hard time accepting the numbers the way I see them.
How many parking spaces will you be left with that are closest to Upper Gulf Road? Those 2 lots there, the future and what is left over from the big lot that's being removed?
I believe it's 200. It's going to be somewhere around 200, 250. If there's 711 down here, There's 1,066 proposed, so that leaves about 350. There is some existing surface parking around the dorms that is going to be left, so 200, somewhere around that number off the top, just a guesstimate.
Okay.
You're reducing it by 240. Lot 5 is going away, 219. And you're adding a lot 9, 66. And they're the two lots that are nearest to Upper Gulf. Right?
I'm sorry, which number were you referring to?
Well, see, we have this exhibit, and maybe we should have one on the table for everyone because it numbers some of the things you had in your slide presentation.
We may have, Richard, is that slide in the back of the presentation?
You can have one of ours.
Yeah. It might be in the PowerPoint as well. Okay. Not the same one.
No, this is from a previous,
These numbers, I think this is the 5-year plan that was submitted by Cabrini, so some of the numbers have changed slightly. But the buildings and the lots are numbered, and that's where it's helpful. If we have to update the numbers on the side, that's fine.
If we go back, I just highlighted, this is the calculation that was in the original.
Right, yeah, no, I have that.
But it's not listing the...
Right, it didn't list the remainder of the surface lot in that slide.
You mean for Lot 5?
Correct, for Lot 5.
It shows a reduction. It doesn't say what the remainder is. I agree.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where I was using it was there's going to be 1,066 proposed on campus, 711 of those are in the garage, and the balance of those are on the remainder of the site. There's going to be some remaining on the southern portion of the site, and then the balance of those will be on the northern portion of the site.
And just to clarify, when you said before you would be slightly in excess of the required parking, that does contemplate the new buildings?
Yes, correct. On sheet 3, we had a breakdown of each building, adding those required parking for each building.
Right now, you have an existing dining facility.
Correct.
And how many seats in that?
Approximately 500.
Will that continue to exist? And then there'll be the additional, on our map, we call it number 3, the new dining center. Is that in addition to the 500?
No, the new dining will replace the existing dining. The existing dining will be converted into educational space.
And how many seats in the new dining proposal?
I think it's pretty much the same. What we're trying to do is improve the aesthetics of that dining center. Right now, it's kind of a basement-like setting. We have students come to campus and say, gee, the dining facilities at high school are better than here. So it's part of the competitive edge we're looking for.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. And conceptually, this is wonderful for Cabrini, but there's also an impact on the community, and that's why I'm asking these questions. So the dining facility will be about the same number?
Yes.
Okay.
As far as exact numbers go, at the time of our application, we sat down. Matt Bauman was the zoning officer at the time. Richard and I sat down with Matt and went over an exhaustive analysis of the entire campus, looking at building per building for both the existing and the proposed buildings, and that's how we came up with the numbers that are shown on the plan.
Do we have those that exhaustive report, Peter or Dave? Because this feels like a repeat of what we've just gone through across the street with Eastern.
And I'm sorry, I did not
That's
hear
okay.
what
I was just
report.
asking. I'm sorry, I forget your name.
Rob Lambert.
Thank you. I was hearing that Rob and Matt went over an exhaustive. Skip's been asking questions about the dining seats
About the
and
park, right. I
Well,
did, yes.
It's parking, but it's this is going to come down to the details of what's the use of the buildings, how were the students calculated. You've mentioned an
You
existing.
want a similar report that was done for Eastern, done here, and you're saying...
We've actually
apparently
submitted
done.
that. We've done, actually, it was a whole color-coded plan of every building.
Did we see that?
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it, if that's the case.
Right. So we need to see that. We
I
need
mean,
to see
nor
that.
have I, but again, this was just for the garage. There was no additional building space proposed, so there was nothing to review as part of this application.
Right,
but they're removing
this does not
parking.
generate any parking as in and of itself. So as far as this project goes, it didn't generate any parking. But however, we did look at, as far as an overall campus analysis, we did go through that exhaustive study, and we show that, all the parking spaces that are required and what was proposed for each building.
Your master plan shows that you're removing, if my math is correct, 667 spots. Your new structure is 750, and then there's a few others, so maybe you have an extra 184.
The numbers have changed. They're actually removing 698.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see a definite set that we have in our hands with the parking analysis.
We actually, the parking analysis, which is based on, that gives you the numbers, is on sheet 3 of 10 that was submitted, and it breaks down the existing condition, what the Gateway project has a reduction of 6 spaces required because of the removal of 2 residences.
Right, but here's the thing, and this is going to be my starting comment. You've come forth with a plan, which I agree with Skip. Conceptually, I understand what Cabrini's trying to do, beautify your campus. That makes a lot of sense to me. And, trying to not have a bunch of big stretches of macadam it makes, is a great idea conceptually. You have an existing nonconformity. I can't even get my head around what the numbers are. You're saying that you had a meeting with Matt and that you went over a very detailed list. We actually need to see that. So whether Dave or Peter have it and can get it to us for us to analyze, with all due respect.
The township has a copy. We're happy to resubmit the same copy.
With all due respect, we can't just, you seem like a very nice guy. I'm sure you're a very nice guy. We can't just actually take your word for it.
We have correspondence from your zoning officer.
That's what we need. We need to see the parking analysis that was done.
We do have that correspondence agreeing to the parking analysis.
There's dormitory beds. There's use for the dining hall. There's use for the various facilities that are very specific in our zoning regulations about how parking is calculated. And as inadequate as they are, we at least need to see the numbers and verify.
And I believe Peter was copied on that correspondence when it was done.
That's great. We need to see that. That was my first thing.
Can I, before we get off that subject, David and Peter, do we need to look, if they're only planning parking, do we need to look at the whole?
You need to recognize that we're getting way in front of ourselves here.
Yeah.
The plan that is in front of you at this time is merely the parking garage. I think what the college is doing here is trying to give you an idea why they're building the parking garage, what their long-term plan is. However, as far as review and approval, we're not there yet because they're not submitting anything. Their current plan, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, it's not talking about removing any of these parking spaces. It's only talking about building this garage. And so all these parking issues and what's happening from a purely review standpoint and what you need to decide on and recommend for approval or denial, that's off in the future. Now, I've mentioned to Capri early on they needed to, that they need to work this all out. They probably should work it out now rather than later so they don't back themselves into a corner. But as far as what's in front of you guys now is merely the question of have they met the requirements for land development for the construction of the garage and the construction of the new access way to that garage.
So we need to limit ourselves and to that. Specifically
I certainly, you can ask questions about this, but just recognize in the end, you're not voting on this master plan. You're just voting on the garage.
Right. Okay.
There will be some removal of spaces, though, just for this parking structure, if it goes where it's currently planned.
That's correct, but obviously it'll be a net increase in parking over the existing condition. Maybe Rob can come up with the number quicker than I can, but it's hundreds of spaces in addition.
There'd be 116 spaces removed and 711 spaces created.
Thank you. Back to the project itself, where you have it currently located. I see very little referenced anywhere in here about the steep slopes that need to be disturbed to build this parking spot where it's currently planned. Dave, Peter?
It's a combination of, I guess, the steep slopes that we pointed out in our initial letter. The applicant produced a plan which was approved by the township. that shows when those steep slopes were created, which verifies they were man-made steep slopes, and which allows them to be disturbed without relief. So,
Were they removed, were they created with a grading permit?
yes,
So
Yes.
do we have that?
yes.
We have that
It's in the
documentation?
township files, yes.
Great. That would be helpful information to have. So what you're saying is that this entire parking garage where it sits currently, where it's proposed, although it has steep slopes, all of the slopes there were created with a grading permit?
They were created under the grading permit generated to construct the existing parking facilities that are out there today.
Okay.
Were there other steep slopes created and the grading permit on the campus in other locations that are highlighted on the grading plan you showed us where they highlighted those areas? Your second slide or your third slide?
Actually,
Any of those man-made and they're...
there are other slopes that were created as part of permits, just, a 3-to-1 slope adjacent to a building. The areas that were identified, and actually they're shown on this plan, the green areas, are these the areas that you were referring? Mm-hmm. Those are really on this side, it's along a stream channel. Those are naturally occurring slopes.
Just to clarify, they're yellow, right? Not green.
Yeah, it's related to the projector.
Okay.
And then
our screen says
on the eastern side, there are slopes there. There's actually also a building in that location. I'm not sure how that building came to be at the time, but there are both slopes and a building in that location. I'd have to really dig through a lot of the property files to figure out exactly. When I was digging through all the property files, I was specifically related to this area.
And the reason I ask is in our first look at this, we asked to explore other locations on the campus that might make more sense to help distribute the traffic a little more evenly. In my mind, closing off the existing Eagle Road entrance in exchange for a new one that's going to feed a parking garage is by no means an equal trade. You're talking about, I drive that every day. There's minimal traffic going up and down that road, as minimal as you can have into your campus, put it that way. When you create this new entrance, you're going to have, now you have a main entrance into your campus off of Eagle Road, which you do not have today. On paper you do, but in reality, the traffic study shows those numbers does not exist. The reason I asked about the other man-made steep slopes is, are there other areas that were discounted because of the steep slopes that are there that may have been man-made that can be built on anyway? And would those make more sense in helping to distribute the traffic more evenly up on Gulf Road, which I think we're all going to come back to as this traffic study points out. What we've said in the initial go-around was that this almost makes it as bad, if not worse, because now you're talking about cars making a left, cars making rights in those traffic numbers, and does nothing to help add traffic to Gulf Road and distribute the traffic more evenly in and out of the campus.
One of the main points of meeting with PennDOT is PennDOT prefers access points off of main roads. They don't want us to have, they would like to minimize our King of Prussia Road entrance as much as possible, because what happens now is you have the King of Prussia Road on the right-hand side. Once you go through the traffic light, you then have to make a left. There are times of the day that people trying to make that left then create a problem that actually goes back through the traffic light, and you get this kind of gridlock effect. If we can make them, or allow them to make the left at the traffic light, at the signalized intersection, then they can go down Eagle to make a right into the college campus, rather than creating, more of a quagmire at that King of Prussia Eagle intersection.
Could you indulge us and put those traffic count numbers back up that page?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, just don't see how the entrance into this parking garage is going to go from 0 to 149 when you're anticipating that half of the spaces in there, 360, are commuter.
This is peak hour traffic, so you have to remember we're taking a 1 hour segment of the day from 6 to 7 p.m. and looking at all of the hours. That was the worst case scenario. There might be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there might be students leaving.
Those are the residential students who are supposed to be staying.
Or a professor that's using the structure. Someone, a user of the campus, might be leaving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not everybody leaving between 6 and 7.
Were any of the studies, or could any of the studies have data for the hours from 2:30 to 3:30?
I don't believe that we studied those hours.
Well, I think that coincides with the school district disgorging all their students too.
Did this study also contemplate what Eastern's study
Yes.
added to the mix?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm having the same trouble Skip's having with these numbers of you're reducing the traffic by King of Prussia Road's traffic goes down to 1150. However, where does it? You're saying it's half of it's going to go left on Eagle Road because it's going to be a more logical thing to do at a signalized intersection. The numbers don't reflect that. The last conversation we had about why this makes sense off
There
Eagle
will
Road.
still be some people that make the left at King of Prussia off that driveway. So that we will still have 120, we still predict 120 users, whether they're coming in or out, making a right or left. I've tried to simplify this slide so we don't show every turning movement of where every car is going. Those get a little bit tedious. So we've tried to simplify it. There are people coming south on King of Prussia Road that will be making a right into our driveway there that do that today and will continue to do that.
And just, you see the 149 number, and that after the driveway, the count on Eagle goes from 902 to 1013. What happens to those odd 40 or 50 cars? And it's still, that 149 number bothers me, but that's...
Again, that number is full users of that driveway. So the 42 number, which we show as part of the 902, that is a subset of the 149. So there's, 102 cars or whatever the number is, 107 cars.
So what you're saying is the 149 divides between the 1013 and the 902?
Correct.
Some people go left, some people go right?
Correct.
Okay. Just the 149 is the number I don't...
The 149, it was anybody entering or exiting our driveway. So there's some people coming in and there's some people going out. But one of the things you also want to look at is the underlying percentages of traffic that are on the underlying roads. It's out of the 902, we're under 5% of that traffic.
Is Eagle a state road?
Yes.
Okay. When we did the traffic study and the signalized light for Eastern, the traffic failed on King of Prussia. And it was an F, and now we got it to a C or something like that. But the way the signal was recommended, it was going to sacrifice Eagle Road and let the traffic be worse on Eagle Road and Pine Tree to try to improve the F of King of Prussia Road. And now we have another project that's going to put more traffic on Eagle Road.
The current Eastern studies for that traffic light include this proposed project.
Originally, they didn't. And then we heard grumblings that there was a project coming in that would maybe also impact the intersection. And we never heard that original study that I'm referencing was prior to your Cabrini coming into the picture. And we've never heard what the updated traffic impact was, including Cabrini, on that intersection. We only heard the recommendations of the type of signal that was proposed for the intersection and some left-hand turn lanes and things, but never what that was actually going to do to Eagle Road. And Eagle Road, state road or not, you cannot even begin to compare Eagle Road to King of Prussia Road and its impact on the neighborhood.
Correct.
Has PennDOT...
Just one point on the King of Prussia Eagle Road intersection. The Township has been involved with Eastern on improving that intersection, and right now there is a plan that's on the table showing basically spending $1 million on improving that intersection, and I don't think that plan was contemplated regarding the earlier plan you're mentioning. And so maybe what needs to be done is maybe, if the Township, if the Planning Commission is concerned about this intersection, if you could, get a hold of Eastern or talk to the Township to get a hold of that plan and the new traffic studies numbers, based on that new plan and the new intersection, which is being contemplated and hopefully will be built in the near future as long as we get the financing for it. Because I think that's what's being contemplated, and to discuss anything other than that at this time is somewhat foolish and a waste of time.
Just for a moment. We're not contemplating any large increase in the population at the school so that there's not additional cars. There will be fewer cars going in, if any, going into the King of Prussia Road, coming into alternatively Eagle Road, but in a safer way because there's going to be a signalized turning lane. And so there will be less likely accidents of left-hand turns going into King of Prussia Road, number one. And number two, the use of the Eagle Road entrance is only from the King of Prussia Road to our new entrance to the garage. It's not anticipated that there would be a lot of traffic going further down Eagle Road. And I believe, and I'm not that conversant with the traffic numbers, but I believe it was a very minimal additional amount of traffic on Eagle Road going into that intersection. But I do, the traffic engineer could explain it better than we have, of course.
I think the concern is, maybe at least my concern is people traveling east on Eagle Road will be behind someone waiting to take a left into your parking garage. I understand that you're not looking to increase your students, but you are looking to shift a large number of cars from King of Prussia Road to Eagle Road. And the entrance into your parking lot will become a new spot of potential problems. People waiting on Eagle Road to take a left into the parking garage, parking structure, potentially rear-ended from somebody coming speeding east on Eagle Road, which is a very common, the people who live in that neighborhood can tell me the speed limit's pretty much ignored.
Well, we've cited that in accord with PennDOT's recommendations. We have approval from PennDOT as to that location. That is what they prefer.
They prefer that for sight lines, but not necessarily for traffic count.
That's true, it's for the sight line.
They preferred the location that you've moved it to for sight lines.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean that, all things being equal, they wouldn't prefer this access to that parking garage to be off of King of Prussia Road or some other location for the structure.
No, that's not true.
I don't know.
No,
That's what I'm unclear about.
PennDOT has suggested they prefer this as the entrance to Cabrini College rather than the King of Prussia Road entrance.
Is that documented in some way? Is there a letter from PennDOT?
Yes, we have a letter from a representative at PennDOT.
I think we got reference of an email today or something about, there was an email from someone at PennDOT.
It should be in your...
We don't have the email itself, though.
Can you guys give us an idea of other alternatives you explored in the past, or however it's been, 60, 90 days?
Yeah, again, last time we were here, I think someone mentioned, why don't you put your parking structure over next to Valley Forge?
Actually, that was me, and I suggested that perhaps you could have two structures. Keep the one on Eagle, make it 400, and do 300 between the existing center and the proposed new center.
And again, PennDOT came back and said, we agree with the fact that you're building one structure, you're collecting all your traffic at one place. So they're in accord with that issue. In addition, two structures are not going to assist us in reducing the amount of impervious surface and will not enhance the green space in campus. We're putting up two structures rather than the one. And lastly, it's a question of costs.
Well, and I think that is exactly the concern, is that PennDOT's recommendation was you're collecting all of the traffic in one spot. I'm as concerned that you're taking away the two upper lots that people are going to drive into just by nature of their location off of Upper Grove Road and put everybody onto Eagle Road. That's the concern I have. It takes away that you have the benefit, you're unique in that you have the benefit of 3 right now points of access to the campus, 2 main points, and then this kind of feeder point off Eagle Road. You're shifting everything from Upper Gulf Road by nature of removing the parking fields up there eventually to Eagle Road. And that's PennDOT, that's exactly what they said. You're collecting it all in one spot. That's the concern I have. That's my biggest issue with this ban, which is why I'm asking other alternatives, like Skip said, can you break it up? Can you look at other steep slopes that might be able to build upon based on previous, man-made slopes?
Yeah,
and still maintain the walkability of the campus. I don't think anyone's talking about building in the campus core or anything aesthetically that's going to be an eyesore and asking you to build a 12-tower parking deck. Are there other ways to break this up so that that distribution can remain?
Again, we studied this for 2 months, and we cut out little cardboard pieces and put them here, there, and everywhere. And it just, again, it's a balance issue. There is no place to put another parking structure. We're going to get neighbors to our east mad at us. We've got watersheds. We've got setbacks from Valley Forge. Where else are we going to put this?
I look at your proposed new campus center that is south of the Dixon Center. The Dixon Center is an athletic facility, right?
Correct.
I share Ken and Skip's concern, but also from a practical standpoint of the Dixon Center, you have athletic events. The new campus center, you'll have activity, people coming in and out. And I look at that surface parking lot that's just to the west of it, just south of one of your athletic fields. And I think that's a perfect place to build a parking structure, to break up exactly what addressed Ken's concern of not having all the traffic shifted to Eagle and Skip's concern of not having it as well. Build a parking structure there right next to an athletic center that's going to bring visitors to your campus. Practically speaking, I find it hard to believe, human nature being what it is, that people are going to enjoy driving in to Eagle Road and walking up the hill to go to see an athletic event at the Dixon Center when they're used to parking very conveniently in surface parking space right next to it. Now, the new campus center will be beautiful, and I think the idea of taking away surface parking to the east of it and creating that green space that you referenced is a great idea. But I also think you could take advantage of the surface parking that you're intending to leave to the west of the new campus center and build a parking structure there that does not abut any residential people. It utilizes the Upper Gulf Road entrance. It backs up to Valley Forge. You already have surface parking there, so whatever slopes and watersheds you have currently aren't impacted by it. It's exactly what we did at St. David's. We're building a bank on top of a parking lot. There's no impervious issue. And it breaks up the bulk of the parking garage and breaks up the bulk of the traffic that is of concern to us.
And the other thing here is that Lot 9 is brand new impervious. And I'm trying to understand why you couldn't take the new campus center, drift it down 50, 60 feet, and leave a lot of that existing so-called lot number 5, which is a surface lot, which would not have any new costs in place. And it still preserves the green heart of the campus. And would service the athletic events, and it would maintain some viability on the Upper Gulf access point.
Again, we have studied all those, and when we were here last time, we encountered these similar questions. And when we go back and sit down with the planners and go through it step by step, those recommendations simply don't work for many reasons. Again, this is a balance issue, and we're trying to reduce the parking surfaces. We're trying to limit the impervious surfaces, as well as all the other recommendations that you heard regarding historic structures and neighbors, et cetera.
What is the seating at the athletic event?
The athletic facility seats about 2,000 people, max.
Okay. And so how do you, I mean, just the way it is today, obviously you've got 950 spots. How do you deal with 2,000 visitors on campus?
Majority of the athletic events, there are more than one person in a car when they come to them. When you have, teams from other colleges, that's all coming in on buses, and many of the spectators are coming in on buses.
Okay. Yeah,
and again, I'd like to stress, we mentioned last time, there is no spot on this campus that it takes more than 5 minutes to walk from one spot to another. It's a small campus.
Right.
People were not going to feel that inconvenienced by parking in a parking structure. If they were at Penn State or Villanova or some of these, you walk for half an hour to get from where you park to where you live,
right,
or where you go to your sports event.
Okay. I'm kind of another mind on this. I mean, it seems to me you're taking the traffic from King of Prussia Road, you're putting on Eagle Road. You are inconveniencing the people on Eagle Road more, but you're conveniencing the people on King of Prussia Road more. And I guess my feeling is, I'm not a traffic expert or an engineer. I kind of have to rely on PennDOT. And if PennDOT has a preference and they say it's better for the whole area to come on Eagle Road, then I guess I would have to defer to their expertise on that.
The traffic that runs through this area is no more than 10% of the total traffic at that intersection is Cabrini's traffic. It's similar to Eastern. Between the two schools, it's only 20% of the traffic.
Yeah, and personally, I like the idea of eliminating surface parking lots and building them in ground. I mean, you've got, I don't know, 50% of this garage is underground.
Right.
And the balance, it appears, if all your diagrams are correct, the balance is heavily landscaped.
Right.
To me, I think that's a winner. I think that's a positive. So anyway, they're my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
What kind of trees and screening is between the structure and Eagle Road? I mean, the new building that was built at Eastern, they took out a bunch of trees, and you can really see the building now. What's the screening going to look like before and after there?
Again, as Martin mentioned, there's a 120-foot setback between Eagle Road and the structure. We will try to maintain as much of the existing forested area between Eagle and the structure as we possibly can. Perhaps many of you know I am on the Shade Tree Commission. I'm the chair of the Shade Tree Commission, and we recommend large canopy trees, and that's what we will be putting back in.
How many trees are coming out?
285 and 365 are going back in.
No, I think maybe we should let the public talk.
Okay, thank you.
It's good. I'd like to wrap up our comments if we can. And does anyone, does the applicant finished with their presentation? Yeah. Does anyone from the public like to come up and comment? Then please do. Again, if you could please limit your discussion to the parking structure and not the 5-year plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Diane Klassen. My question is for the exit and entrance of this parking garage. Where is that in relationship to the entrance and exit for Easterns?
Rob, please. No, you can. Is that it? Okay.
I believe it's about 200 feet to the east of their residential entrance. East. So closer.
Peter, where are the features for this plan, within 500 feet of the property?
If you look at this plan, this is the existing eastern residential driveway.
Okay.
And this is our proposed driveway here to the east.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Was that question directed to me?
Yes, I'm wondering whether, David, Peter, they don't have a waiver in for the, or do they have a waiver in?
Well, they do have a waiver in. I mean, I was going to get to that later, but yes,
Okay.
they do have a waiver request on that.
The lady, and I don't recall your name, I'm so sorry. Thank you. You had made mention at the beginning that you had no waivers.
As far as I understood, waivers requested.
Actually, I'm going to suspend public comment for a moment. I went out of turn, sorry, but I will come back to you. David, if we could get your
I'm
comments.
sorry, on this project, my mistake, on this project, there is not a waiver, there's not a waiver requested for showing existing features within 500 feet.
So they'll need to submit that, yes, no? If they would like it?
Yes, with the new directive from administrative staff that information needs to be shown, so yes.
David, you want to take a minute to go over any comments, your comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I guess as they sort of start off, this plan has not been modified at all since my previous review letter, with the exception of moving the driveway access. So the only additional items were some items recommended by the fire marshal at our SAC meeting regarding listed on sheet 2 of my review letter. The fire marshals recommended that the center median on the existing Eagle Road access be removed to facilitate better emergency access to the campus. Comment number 2, there is, with the improvements proposed on the site, there will be very limited vehicular access to existing buildings on the campus, obviously as the applicant indicated, because they're trying to make the campus more pedestrian friendly, but the fire marshal would like some emergency access to several of the residential structures out there, the Lanch House, the McManus House, and the Infante House. The garages, the fire marshal would like standpipes placed in the proposed garages, and also he would like 3 new fire hydrants placed on campus at the limits of the proposed garage.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
And if we can resume now public comment?
My name is Tom Rogers, and I have several questions. And I apologize, but I got lost at how many cars are going into this garage. That's 1. 2, all those cars have access to Eagle Road all the time. 3, will the evening students have access to this garage? 4, how far is that entrance from that S-turn? And anybody that drives up and down Eagle Road, know that when you go west on Eagle, go down the turn and up and around, that's totally blind. And anybody stopping to make a right-hand turn is going to back up traffic. So you have a potential traffic hazard that's going to develop on that turn. I just can't see putting all those cars in that garage, limiting the access off of King of Prussia, is going to dump more cars on Eagle. And if you've been up and down Eagle Road recently, I drove it, I guess, a couple of days ago, around 5 o'clock. There's more cars that are now backing up from that traffic light down around to the S-turn. So personally, since my property backs up to Eagle off Woodcrest Circle, and I know in the evening, all the college students that are going there in the evening go up and down that road, will they stop using the King of Prussia entrance and be using the Eagle? To me, personally, living there, seems they're dumping a lot of traffic on Eagle, and to me, it's going to create more accidents.
Just stay with us a second, though, if you would, please, just to make sure your questions get answered. Rob, can you take a stab at those? Did you write them down, or?
I was starting to. He lost me there.
Yeah, you were a little fast. So.
The first one was how many cars. The overall count in the garage was 711. 350 of those are anticipated to be residential students, and then approximately 350 cars will be coming in and out of that garage.
So residential students are still going to use the entrance and exit off of Eagle, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
all of them are still going to be using the entrance on and off of Eagle each day.
Not necessarily each day. If a residential student lives there, so they
Yeah,
may.
but he goes out for dinner, and he goes out to buy his groceries.
They're gonna stay at the new dining facility and and enjoy the new dining facility.
I don't think so, having been to college. So then, therefore, 750 are going to be accessing in and out of that off of Eagle Road every day.
Not necessarily, no. We talked about the 350 that would be accessing either Eagle, and it's also connected to the internal loop road system. So somebody coming off of Upper Gulf can come down, straight down through the campus, around, and into the garage, because that will be connected internally to campus also.
But I thought the entrance off of Eagle was to limit the amount of traffic coming off of King of Prussia as well as Upper Gulf.
It anticipates that we're going to be limiting the traffic coming off of King of Prussia, but not necessarily changing the traffic off of Upper Gulf.
But you're still going to be dumping in 350 cars twice a day in and out of it.
There will be we anticipate 350 cars that will be commuter cars to that garage.
So therefore, you're creating a problem on this S-turn.
No, I disagree, but that's, we'll see.
I drive it twice a day.
I drive it, I don't know, twice a day, maybe once a day.
Okay. That was
Are all your questions?
Pardon me?
Are they all your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the other question is, will the evening students be using the college, or using this?
Defer to Howard for actual usage.
Yeah, we would anticipate some evening students will be using this facility.
So you're going to have a lot more than 350 cars going.
Perhaps. Again, the residential students will be coming and going at various times of the day. We keep referring to the peak hour because that is when we expect the greatest exchange. With the commuter students, as has been brought up here, some will still be coming through Upper Gulf and utilizing the parking structures that we propose in the future. So they're not all going to go to the garage. Some definitely will have to, yeah.
Okay, so you're going to be putting more traffic on even in the evening also.
Perhaps.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Hi, good evening. My name is Nancy Gordon Costello. I'm an alum of Cabrini College. I'm a trustee, and I'm also a 25-year neighbor. I live further north on King of Prussia Road. Just a couple of general comments. I think you would come to know Cabrini College over the course of years, and that the college also has a desire to maintain the integrity and the beauty of our campus, as well as the surrounding community. So whatever structure we put up would also be important for us, as well as the surrounding community, and will preserve the integrity of the surrounding community. Also, Eagle Road, as you know, winds past 3 educational institutions, bordered on both sides by structures that are zoned educational and institutional. So the fact that we would be putting up a structure which would be heavily landscaped wouldn't have a great degree of differing impact as to what is already there. The road improvements associated with this project, I believe, because I drive this area all the time, every day, would have a positive improvement on the Eagle Road and King of Prussia. And we've talked tonight about some impact about possibly building a structure up towards the different end of campus, exiting onto Upper Gulf Road. But if you've ever attempted to make the right onto Upper Gulf Road and then to either go right or left on King of Prussia Road at peak hours, that is a traffic nightmare. Tradifrin has had, I'm sure in concert with Radnor Township, extensive conversation about reconfiguring that intersection there. And I think in large part, a lot of the backup at King of Prussia and Eagle Road is due to the staggering of traffic that takes place up at Eagle Road, Upper Gulf and King of Prussia Road. So it's a kind of a domino effect there as well. So I think when we talk about the possibility of a parking structure up at our different end of campus, you have to think about the impact turning right onto Upper Gulf Road, and then the possibility of going either right or left on King of Prussia Road from there. And just finally, as being an alum and as being a 25-year neighbor, I think you've always found King of Prussia Road, as far as its relationship with the community, we have welcomed our neighbors onto our campus to enjoy our campus, the beauty, to walk and jog, take their, respectfully, their animals onto our campus. You're always invited to come to our cultural events at no cost. So I think as we go further in this project, we really are very well intentioned in every aspect of our planning going forward in the future with this particular project. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
My name is Richard Neville. I'm a 30-year neighbor to Cabrini. I live on Eagle Road, but it's called Pine Tree when you get past King of Prussia. I'm on the corner of Pine Tree and Spruce Street. And I use that road consistently. Go into Wayne, go down to the Acme, you're always on Eagle Road. And I've never seen a problem there. I've seen the problem over in the other corner where Upper Gulf and King of Prussia comes. I go through there on occasion too. But I've never seen any difficulty with that particular location. I think we have a problem of not having all the pieces to our puzzle. I mean, that's your problem right now. We're not quite sure how this is going. We're changing some parking, which is serious, and traffic patterns. And we're not sure of how that is all going to work out yet. We're trying to be very sure about that. And I think I worked at Villanova for 30 years. I was VP for 20 years. Part of that 20 years, I was standing in front of your predecessors more often than I think, and always had great satisfaction for how the Planning Commission deals with these very, very thorny issues. My other claim to being up here is I was the vice president at Cabrini. After I retired from Villanova, they needed a vice president on an interim basis. They tell you for 6 months, but it was a whole semester. More than that. It was a whole year. And I enjoyed my year there. I got to know Howard was there then, and a very competent professional, very thorough person, into aesthetics too, which is interesting for some of your issues of how things have to look when they're finished. My experience of Eagle Road has never been a problem, going or coming. But I think the people up here need more, I guess, details about some of these peak hours. I mean, I don't know how the night school seems to be not to overlap the day schools, from my experience there. And my other thing about being there for a year, they really need this project. They really need a student center. We didn't have a student center there the 1 year I was there. And they really need that. And they need to correct all of that campus. It's a beautiful campus, but it's too cut up with the roads and the parking. So I urge the Planning Committee to do as they've always done, very fair, very thorough, and I speak for myself as a neighbor here first, that I see no problems with this. But we don't know what's going to happen, and that's the problem. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Schneller. I live at St. David's Park condominiums. However, I traverse this street and intersection constantly, and I've ruminated on this with you, and I still have a big question mark. But I do like the fact that there's traffic calming on Eagle Road. I think ultimately it's a help. I have a rather related request or suggestion. Being a long-time traveler on Eagle Road, more than most people ever will, and having done most of it jogging and bicycling, I can say it's a gorgeous stretch of land in Radnor that nobody can really enjoy. And I believe a sidewalk from Fenimore, that border, that's not Fenimore, from the western border up to this driveway would really assist the township. And with a stretch of road like that, why not have the township enjoy it? I don't think a sidewalk would offend their plan. It really would not interfere with the campus at all. And we know with the growing plans here with Eastern that connector sidewalks can't do anything but help. The park is there. Eastern's got to work out somehow how they're going to get from their campus up the hill to Radnor Street Road campus. In the meantime, this is a great community boon for joggers and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Please come forward.
I'm Jim Rogers. I live at 8 Paul Road, which is right there. First of all, thank you very much for the privilege of addressing you. Mrs. Stern, I think your ideas about moving this up in the campus would be certainly helpful. I'm sorry, whoever's idea it was. I know that you require each of the institutions in Radnor Township to do everything possible to collect the activities of their campuses more toward the center to allow for the beautification of the perimeter. I think that's the stated desire of the commission. My hope is that you will insist that this be done in this case. The one favorable thing I can see from this is the closing off of the Paul Road entrance, because I can tell you, because I can hear every single day of my life the screeching of tires when people come down to make an illegal left turn into Cabrini from eastbound Eagle Road. And I think 1 or 2 cars have actually been subjected to being missing it and going right into Fenimore Park, going right through the gates and crashing through, as you may have seen. So that much I think is good. Cabrini's always been a good neighbor. We believe that it's our responsibility as residential neighbors to be equally as good, but I'm very encouraged to hear that you have everybody's interests at heart, not just theirs, but also the residents who have been here, as I have, for 3.5 decades. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Paula DeLong, and I live on Forest Road, and passing Cabrini is part of my morning commute. Most of the people that are on the road with me at my hour are parents taking kids to private schools going east on Eagle Road. I attended the college's invitation for their display of this program back in June, and I attended the college's invitation last week. What I've noticed is that their goal seems to be consistent, and that is maintaining a certain amount of student body and improving the pedestrian experience of the students on campus. I've heard some people concerned about the sight from the road, and in the summer, after I attended the first meeting, I started looking up at the mansion while I was traveling east in the morning to my job, and I couldn't find it because of the vegetation. And when it became fall, I started to look up the road to see if I could find where this potential garage was going to be, and I still struggled finding it. This morning when I drove to work, I tried again, and I realized I was a hazard because I was stretching my neck so much to try to find out where this was going to be. What that made me conclude is that I'm not going to see it because I'm driving by. What is more visible to me are the buildings at eyesight level, and on my right, which are the buildings that belong to St. David's. I don't anticipate any impact that would be detrimental to me as a commuter or as a community member. I appreciate the thoughtfulness, especially considering the kind of terrain that is under the campus. I heard at the meetings that there are 2 springs that they have to honor, and the embankment that they have to honor that is abutting the Valley Forge Academy. and I would urge you to seriously consider this proposal as a good one.
My name is Kevin Blackney. I live on Walnut Avenue. I think everybody wants the notion of having a walkable campus, and my comments are very sensitive because I know, Howard, you live in the same community as we do, and you're as sensitive as traffic as in our community as everyone else is. I do wonder whether or not, Howard, when you've had any discussions with the neighbors, whether or not there's been any discussion about, will this change create more traffic driving through our neighborhood? Did that come up in any of the? Is it okay if I ask you a question related to that, Howard?
Yeah, Kevin, several of the neighbors raised that question, that they felt putting more traffic onto Eagle Road would increase the traffic going through their neighborhood. Just the other day, I sat at the Eagle Road intersection or entrance for a good 10 minutes and observed the traffic. The majority of the traffic that would go down Paul Road and then break over to Walnut has nothing to do with Cabrini College. That traffic is coming from somewhere else, and Cabrini's traffic would not contribute any more to that. Again, that traffic is definitely coming from elsewhere.
Okay. Thanks, Howard. Because I know that if there's any additional traffic that's going to come out there, it's probably going to come right past your house too.
Yep.
But I do wonder whether or not spreading it out would be a little bit, because as the Vice President mentioned, that intersection at Gulf Road and King of Prussia Road would be one to avoid, and you could avoid it by coming down Radnor Street Road and coming in that way, and it might just change the traffic patterns in a way that, from planning point of view, might just want to be thought about a little bit. But again, I'm sensitive because I know Howard lives in the neighborhood, and he's not going to create more traffic in his neighborhood. He doesn't want any more traffic in his neighborhood than anyone else. So thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment? Okay, this is a preliminary hearing, so and it's getting late, so I think unless anybody on the board has anything strong opinions or comments they need to voice, I think we're concluded. I mean, do we have to second this?
I just want to ask one question. A number of times, and okay, I'm going to do a preamble. I love the idea of the garage being largely concealed. Most of my issues are traffic. Second, is there any issue with entering and leaving this garage in terms of stacking? Are there gates? Do you have to have a badge? Do you need a permit to go in and out? Because I know you've said that you invite people to use the facilities, attend sporting events. Will this be as if it were an open field, except that it's 4 levels high? Or 3?
Yeah, the only gating that we would have would be very similar to the gating we currently have. And I think I explained this last time I was here. Between the hours of 10 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning, it is a gated community. So we would continue to do that with this parking structure. Otherwise, it would serve as a flat parking structure or a flat surface parking.
So outside of the time, you do not have to stop or do anything. There's no badges. There's no show your permit.
No, we don't anticipate that. It would be no different than our public safety going through our current parking lots and saying, you don't have a permit. Okay.
Actually, just based on that, then the one thing I'm going to say might be missing from this is some kind of turnaround right at the garage, if the garage were full or if it were closed, so that if somebody were to pull in there and find out it's closed from, what did you just say, 10 to 6? And they need to have room to turn around there in order to come back out onto Eagle Road. They're going to need a little area to do that.
Yeah, I would anticipate that if the parking structure were full, we would close the gates to the roadway.
So the gates would be at Eagle Road?
Yes.
But if it's,
That's the way they are now.
but how do people get out then? If the gate's closed?
It wouldn't be any different than what we have now. They can exit, but they can't enter unless, they can show their ID or whatever at 10, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It would be a similar layout.
But those other areas where you have gates are
Right.
not right on a major road where there could be a backup of traffic.
Right.
I'd be
The
concerned
control
about-
gate is off of Upper Gulf Road. That's the one that people can only go through between 10 and 6. There's a public safety guard there, and that public safety guard says, okay, who are you? Show me your identification. That would remain. That would still be the only control gate between those hours.
So Eagle Road Gate would be closed between those hours?
Yes.
So there's only one way in between those hours?
Yes, and that's been demanded, in essence, by the township.
Okay, one way in, one way out?
Yes.
Okay. So in other words, if you had to close the garage during normal hours because it was too full, they would have to exit through the control gate?
Right.
How would they get to it? How would they even get to
They
the
said they
control
couldn't
room?
go in, but they could still exit.
But they exit through the control.
Is that what you meant? But-
Yes, exit through the Upper Gulf.
So it would truly close the Eagle both directions?
Yes.
If the garage were full?
Yes.
How
How
are
do
you going
you
to monitor the
circulate?
garage being full or not?
Pardon?
How will you know if the garage is full or not?
We're anticipating a public safety officer, a site there for public safety. It is a parking structure.
Hope it works better than the airport, but okay.
Can I ask a question about the parking up by the sports facility? Is there going to be any type of restrictions there that would make it a certain amount of time you can park there to encourage people to use the parking garage if they're staying longer? Do you have any kind of restrictions on any of those parking areas so that people don't find that they're coming in from Upper Gulf not to find a parking spot and have to travel all through your campus to get to the parking garage?
The only restrictions that we have now are for residential parking. If it's long-term parking, we identify for the students where they're allowed to park. Likewise, we do a similar thing for our commuter students. So it would be the same in that regard.
So am I correct in understanding that if the lot is considered full and that gate is closed, they'll have to travel all the way up through the parking lot to leave the garage? I mean, all through your campus just to leave?
Yeah.
So they won't be allowed out that
Right. That's the
nearby
way
entrance?
it is now.
That's the way it
Yeah.
works. Okay.
All right, if there are no other comments, then we don't make any motions on this, right?
Well, I think in the past you've made a motion to table it if you plan to
Okay.
table it.
So would someone like to make a motion, please? Let's table it.
Well, my quandary is, I think, I don't have any problem with the appearance of it. I have a problem with access, and I'm trying to think, even if you keep the building in that spot, can you bring another access point maybe that's easier to get to it? I'm not sure what the elevation is, but if you come in off of Eagle Road, not Eagle, Camp Prussia Road, can you maybe make another road that takes you into that? I'm not explaining myself very well. Just another access point to get to the garage, because I really feel that you're closing your options as far as ingress and egress into the parking structure during normal day hours as opposed to in the evening hours.
Okay.
Like behind that pond there, can you bring a road over behind the pond and connect to your road?
One could still traverse King of Prussia Road, enter into the King of Prussia Road entrance, and come up to this node,
Mm-hmm.
and then drop down into this area and enter in the parking structure. That's still a possibility. As with the Upper Gulf Road entrance, one can still come down this way and work their way over to this and down and again into the parking structure.
All right, could you do something to encourage some of the traffic to go that way so that you're still bringing people in from other points and not encourage them all to come off of Eagle Road by maybe reconfiguring some of those roads a little bit?
We would prefer not to reconfigure. This is an historic roadway.
Yeah, with the trees and everything, I guess so.
And it's just, in my background, this says Olmsted all over it, and I wouldn't want to touch it.
Okay.
This has an array of 150-year-old oak trees that comes down to Grace Hall. It was the original north-south access, again, an Olmsted feature.
Are those roads wide enough to encourage two-way traffic, to bring traffic off of Eagle Road easily and still have your pedestrians walking?
You're talking about
coming in through the other two entrances.
Are they wide enough for two-way? Yes.
Two-way plus pedestrians.
We would not have pedestrian on these roads.
But they would come down part way, wouldn't they? Where the little,
okay.
I guess it's
in through here.
Yeah,
there is sidewalks now, and there would continue to be such.
Okay. I'd like to see you somehow encourage some traffic to come into the other entrances if you have to keep this building here, so that you can split off some percentages, maybe 25% in through the other entrances somehow to remove some of that traffic from Eagle Road.
Again, I think, in my observation, I believe the Upper Gulf Road entrance is still going to be used. I mean, that point was brought up earlier. There's a significant amount of people that come from Chester County using Upper Gulf Road, and I think they will continue to use that.
Yeah, my main concern is traffic patterns in and out, and I just hate to see them all coming in off of Eagle Road. I don't have a problem with the building where it is and the way it's built.
Okay.
It's the traffic that bothers me.
Right.
But what I'm reading from this traffic study is the traffic that is coming from Eagle Road onto Eagle Road, the new traffic is coming off of King of Prussia Road, and none of it really, Gulf Road is not impacted virtually at all. Is that a correct statement?
We don't anticipate much impact at the Upper Gulf Road entrance.
Gulf Road
we
at all.
believe that it's going to, as you pointed out, it doesn't make sense, but we don't think that's going to change that much.
Okay, so the only way to encourage anything is through King of Prussia Road, which doesn't seem like that's really viable.
Right, and again, PennDOT is saying, yes, collect them here, stop collecting them here and blocking this intersection.
But I think PennDOT has a different goal than we do. PennDOT's goal on all roads seems to be move the traffic as fast and as quickly as possible and get it through there. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make the area safe and good for the community.
Right. Well, their interest is in safety as well. They've stressed that to us over and over.
But PennDOT only looked at one alternative. They didn't look at other alternatives on the campus.
We pointed out to them, they've only looked at this.
So they didn't compare it to anything. They said, if you're going to do it here, here's the impact, basically.
Right.
Okay. It would help relieve the King of Prussia intersection, but there wasn't an alternative proposed for what other distribution might be better for traffic coming in and out of the campus.
No, they did not recommend that. And again, this is preliminary, and we would like to move on. Again, we see this as a by right issue, and we're working with you, we're working with the neighbors, and we will continue to do that. I communicated that to our neighbors all through the last 3 meetings. And I can assure you I'm a 40-year resident here as well. So I'm not leaving, and we're going to do this right.
Peter, I just have as you know, I'm standing in tonight. So what are our choices here?
You can table it.
Right.
You can make a motion to recommend approval. You can make a motion to recommend denial.
Or we could recommend approval with conditions?
Yeah, the approval conditions, yes.
Okay,
I'll take a shot at it unless you want to.
thank you.
Okay. I would like to recommend approval with the condition that when you come back, give us some sort of assurances on the traffic, maybe some more traffic studies at different times. I'd like to know the timing of your students leaving the campus during the day normally, when most of the classes end, and also when your evening classes start. Because I'd like to see the spread of the traffic throughout the day. I think the plan is basically good. I'm just a little nervous about that traffic. If you can give us some assurances that it would be spread out enough so that there wouldn't be an impact.
If before listening to the Planning Commission, your concerns are regarding traffic distribution. Recognize that if they receive preliminary plan approval, they're basically locked in. You're not, if you're going to want to look at a different location for the whole garage or a part of the garage, by giving them preliminary plan approval at this point in time, or recommending it and moving it onto the board, you're not going to, unless the board adopts something or denies it or tells them to come back here, you're not going to really revisit that issue. So since some of you certainly have stressed that, and some of you have talked about looking at different areas, I just want to make it clear to you guys at this point in time that if you're going to recommend approval, you're basically kind of saying, okay, we're fine with where the garage is now.
Well, I think we've all said that we'd like 2 garages. I said that the last time too, but it doesn't look like we're going to get them.
Kathy, I'm going to chime in. I'm going to make
Okay.
a motion to table. And for a couple of reasons. We have traffic concerns. We have parking concerns. We only have 5 of the 9 of us here. We haven't
Okay.
even, and this is their first
Then I'll
time coming to us.
withdraw my recommendation.
This is their first time coming to us with preliminary plan. So I think in terms of timing, I thought that the first time was sketch. So what's our timing then?
We have an extension until April.
Okay, so I'm still going to make the motion, we table it and give the other planning
Is
commission
that
members.
April for final or preliminary?
Well, for preliminary.
Okay.
I just hate to go through
I'm
this
hoping they come back.
again.
Pardon me?
We hope they come back with what?
I'm hoping they come back with some of the things Kathy just mentioned, the types of questions Kathy asked, assurances. That's not really in the ordinances. I mean,
I just hate to subject everybody.
I was thinking
this
tonight was our
again.
first night. I thought we saw sketch the last time in September.
Yeah.
It was preliminary.
Yeah.
Okay, and we tabled it then?
We asked them to look at other locations, and they said they looked and do not have other locations that they want to go to or can go to. I pulled the minutes from that here if you wanted to look at them. A couple of things I highlighted from that. We wanted student population numbers, which they gave us tonight, and the requirements, parking requirements on campus. We had issues then with access on Eagle Road. We mentioned it. We did request them considering 2 structures. They considered and said no, basically. And research other areas for placement of structures, and we remember that answer. And then it was requested surface parking combined with a parking structure in a more central location also. So I think we're asking the same questions now that we asked then, and the answer is no, they don't want to do it or don't want to or cannot, either way. But I think the building itself looks nice. It's, the parking that we have.
I think in a perfect world, you could have a 1,000-car garage there, and that would be better. I think everyone's concern here is traffic, and it is a tricky road, and I'm one of the people that drive it. I used to drive it twice a day. Part of the time, it's bad, and this will make it a little worse, that's all. And we have a concern. I understand the cost issue, but I mean, this is an expensive garage. This is multiple floors, ramps, I mean, underground. I mean, there's all sorts of additional costs here. So maybe the cost issue is not insurmountable. I mean, I look at that blue triangle up near Upper Gulf, and I wonder why that couldn't be two-story. And that's away from the heart of the campus.
I have a concern if we table this. We've really spent a lot of time since the September hearing to go over various options. We've met with the planners, we've met with PennDOT, we've met with the Shade Tree Commission, and it appears that from everything that we've looked at, this is the site where we can put the garage. And we cannot put it at another location, either because of the steep slopes or the waterways or other things. So I don't know what effect tabling it will do.
Just to address that, you're going to build other buildings.
But
So
not in this
is a
plan.
building, and a building is a building. I mean, it's an aesthetic call that you made a decision, which I respect at the same time, that you want to get all the cars away from the buildings as much as possible and hide them in this 711-car garage. The only concern, and I even applaud that idea if there was some way to keep most of the 700 cars from going out over Eagle Road.
Well, I think the traffic report indicates that the cars that presently use the Upper Gulf Road will not change in that regard,
114, right?
just during that hour.
Well, we have to use a basis for something, so, okay.
But I reiterate, I'm not
But
quite sure what tabling will
200 or
do.
300 spaces are going away from that end of campus, too. Between, the lower, near the new dining hall and also the athletic facility. A lot of net spaces are going away from there.
But not immediately. At this point, we respectfully request you to rule on this. We, as I say, we've spent a lot of time and effort, design plans, we've met with PennDOT, we've taken the recommendations, we've tried to balance everything. We've tried to take a balance of what it is we would like to accomplish on campus to make it more pedestrian-friendly, more use to the present students, a way to attract future students, as well as keep the greenery, the landscaping.
I think it's terrific for your school. I'm not sure it's terrific for the traffic patterns and the neighbors. But I think it's fabulous for Cabrini.
But I do think that we've looked at other areas that we could or couldn't locate the building.
I even think that's the best location for the building. There's still an impact. And if there were two buildings, the impact would be less, that's all. And if some of the surface lots were preserved, the impact would be less if this building were smaller. And at this moment, I appreciate you're making this plea, and I don't want to cut you off, but I want to ask, after you have finished your remarks, if David would comment on his assessment of the traffic counts and the way this building is going to be used, because I don't think you've directly spoken to that. But please finish your statement.
Well, my plea is that I would appreciate your ruling on this tonight and not tabling it again, because we spent a lot of time of an interval since September to now to fine-tune this. We've made the footprint smaller. We've looked and investigated a lot of other options. And we are of the conclusion that this is the best location for the garage and that the entrance and exit, according to PennDOT, is best suited on Eagle Road there. And so I don't know what tabling will do, because I don't believe we can accomplish the other suggestions that you've made.
David, your comments?
Well, I was just going to say, they have submitted a traffic impact study. We've made comments on it. We're awaiting a revised traffic impact study. I apologize. If I'd known this was going to head this direction, I would have brought my traffic engineer to comment on it. Our traffic engineer generally agrees with the way they've split the traffic. Again, I can bring her here to better verbalize, what they're doing and our concurrence, but there are some modifications we're asking them to make. But I think at the end of the day, we're still going to end up with, we're going to agree with the split that they currently are proposing.
Maybe I could ask a few questions, and it will clear up some of our questions. What time do the students generally finish class, the day students?
Yeah, our day classes typically wind down around 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
4 o'clock, so commuters would be out by that time?
Right.
Or shortly thereafter?
And then our evening division starts around 4:30, so that's the crossover.
So about
time.
the same time?
Yeah.
Okay. My experience has been with morning or with evening drive. It starts around 4 and goes to about 7. Is that what your experience is in that neighborhood?
A little earlier. Not at 6, yeah.
Ends at around 6 on there. So you will have the in and out at that time when you're going to have.
Their existing study is 6 to 7.
Yeah, which is too late. Yeah.
I mean, you just basically said that most of the people are going to leave before 6.
Yeah, but the study, again, includes the whole neighborhood. I mean, that's the peak.
Yeah, but it's not the peak of when you have traffic going in and out of the.
No wonder why you're saying that your traffic only accounts for 10% of the traffic, but you didn't do it when your traffic is moving.
Yeah, I think we need that 4 to 6 area.
Overall, we did the account throughout the whole day, and that's how we came up with the 10%. So it did not include just the peak for that 10%.
And did they do their study in accordance with how you would like the study done? Is it logical the way they did the study?
It's logical. One of our comments was that they focused on the AM peak hour. We asked them to look at the PM peak hour. But it's logical. And I think what Howard was getting at is what you want to do is focus on the peak hour of traffic on Eagle Road, not necessarily the peak hour of traffic in and out of Cabrini, because that peak hour is not going to be what drives the traffic concerns. It's going to be the peak hour of traffic on Eagle Road.
Is that the peak hour of traffic on Eagle Road?
Well, that was our comment. They submitted a traffic study which focuses on the AM peak hour, the AM rush. And just looking at the comments real quick, it's been several months, but their study did not address the PM peak hour to our satisfaction. So they are going to submit that.
What do you call PM peak? I would call PM peak 4 to 6. And they did 6 to 7.
It varies from place to place. You have to base it on actual traffic studies. In other words, they'll measure the traffic on Eagle Road and find out when the peak hour is, when the highest volume of traffic is in the existing
So you feel
condition.
that this 6 to 7 was the peak hour on Eagle Road?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
They have to.
We don't know.
Again, they showed us the AM peak hour. We're asking for the PM peak hour.
So has our traffic expert evaluated this second report, which is the 6 to 7 p.m.?
Well, we don't have that yet. We don't have that peak hour.
So
But
the numbers we saw tonight, you've seen them also for the first time when they did their PowerPoint?
I can't say I don't know if those numbers are the exact numbers that were in the report we have. All I'm saying is the methods in which they used are consistent with, we are confident, or we agree with the methods they used. We agree with the trip distribution they used, maybe not the exact numbers. The exact numbers, that's what we're waiting on the PM peak study.
But the numbers they have on this chart that I think we're about to see again are not, you have seen them in a written report or not, I guess?
I'd have to double check to see if those are the exact same numbers. I mean, again, if those are PM peak hours, and based on my traffic engineer's comments, she did not have the PM peak hours, she just had the AM peak hours.
This was an excerpt from our traffic study, and this is where I obtained the numbers. We had the existing traffic peak hours for AM peak hour and PM peak hour. We had the projected peak, that's the underlying growth numbers, and then we had the projected peak with the new structure. And I know you can't read the numbers here, but looking at, for instance, our driveway, the 149, what I did to come up with that 149 number was take the people turning right into the site, the
What
people
time
turning
was
left
this
into
done?
the site.
Do you know?
What was the date?
No, time of day.
I believe the PM peak was 6 to 7, and that was based on they do the counts over several hours, and they determine when the underlying traffic is the highest peak, and that's how they determine the peak hour.
So you did do this count from, say, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7.
Yeah, we have the underlying
Okay.
numbers.
Next, I would like to table this and ask you to bring in those other counts. Can we see the papers on it?
Let me ask you another question. I mean, is that something that we should be doing as a planning commission? If PennDOT is said that this is a better choice, I mean, is that, I don't know. I mean, if it is, then we should be doing it. If it's, it just seems like we're exceeding, I don't know about our authority, but exceeding our expertise
This
into
is certainly part of planning. And in my experience, this is what planning commissions do. Is traffic is an important aspect of planning, and certainly, I think from a resident standpoint, is usually one of the biggest issues they have, and it's also one of the most nebulous issues possible because everyone has an opinion on it, and the science itself seems a little squishy at times. Not to assault any traffic engineer in the room. But, this is certainly, if this is a planning issue, it's normally reviewed. The way it is reviewed is through the review of traffic studies, which are produced in the methods being described here. This is the way you look at it, as opposed to having someone walk up and say, yeah, it's awful, I hate it. I'm in traffic jams all the time, which is what the residents say, but we need to objectively quantify that somehow, which is what the study's supposed to do.
Could we also get a copy of this letter, this opinion from PennDOT? Because I think Ken alluded to it. I mean, the context of the letter might be that if they were only given the option of Eagle Road, which, understanding the constraints of the things you've considered, that might shed a little bit different light, as to PennDOT's opinion about this.
Have you considered the lot without the feeder road to Eagle Road? In other words, could this lot be accessed only by the loop road? And the existing traffic pattern that exists today with the Paul Road entrance and everything else stays the same?
Yes, we have considered that. Again, PennDOT came back to us and said they would prefer we not do that. Their objective is always get the cars off the road to your parking as quickly as possible.
That is in their written opinion?
Yeah, Frank mentioned that in our meeting. It was, yeah, I think it was Frank.
I don't know if Fran Haney is the representative of PennDOT that reviewed it. I don't think his opinion was very short. It was based on a meeting that we had. Representative of David Lay's office was at the meeting that we had with PennDOT. We went through options with them. We came to this option. We looked at moving the driveway. At that time, he asked us to moving the driveway further west. We did that. We sent him sketches of that. He sent back correspondence saying that they accepted the adjustments that we made to the plan, and that we, when we submit for permits, they would find that location acceptable.
I guess I have one question. Is it not feasible for you if you don't have that entrance from Eagle Road? If PennDOT were to say, okay, we'll accept that because Radnor Township wants it that way or whatever, would it work for you still?
It would bring a lot more traffic through the center of campus again. That center of campus pedestrian issue would be right back in our face again.
But even if you closed off where you said you closed off where you have your blue dotted trail loop in the center, the true core of campus here,
right? And
traffic was forced to the new loop road up to, and it still have their existing access points they have now. I guess my frustration is, this is the second time we've seen this preliminary plan, and the alternative is for us to either table it, approve it, or deny it. There's been no compromise. It's, hey, here's the same plan again we had last time without any of our feedback taken into consideration, except for maybe a few minor tweaks to the location of the entrance by 25 feet and a little bit, I don't know, a couple of square feet shaved off of the garage. My concern, I think I've voiced this a few times, is you're consolidating all of this traffic. For your convenience of having this pedestrian campus, all the detriment goes to the township. And it's what if it doesn't have a traffic signal? What if it does? Mm-hmm. And then it's too late. Now we're stuck with it. I'm trying to find a compromise, and I feel like we're offering alternatives, and we're getting we moved some cardboard around on the paper for a couple of days, and it didn't work for us. And PennDOT said this is a place that works because it's the only alternative was given. And now you're asking us, we've already been down this path, why do we have to table this again? Because we're still in the same spot we were last time. I think all of us conceptually are. We need some kind of compromise that's going to solve some of these problems, and that's how this works. It's a give and take. We're going to give you feedback. We're not asking you to do 100% of it. We're saying, where's the middle ground here? Right. And I think there might be a solution here. I personally have a problem with the garage being there. I have a problem with it being 99.9% of that traffic just purely in the ease of getting out of campus is going to dump on the Eagle Road. I don't know what that impact is, and I don't know if I want to roll the dice and see what it is. Mm-hmm.
If I can chime in, mostly to the board here, it seems to me that the traffic, there's no more cars coming in or going out as a result of this, except for as a result of this development. And there's no impact to Upper Gulf Road. So the real issue is everybody's focused on the additional traffic on Eagle Road, but it's all coming off of King of Prussia Road. So I guess I don't feel like there's no more traffic. So there's a benefit to King of Prussia Road, a detriment to Eagle Road, but it seems like nobody, I don't know, balances the benefit to King of Prussia Road, even though there is a detriment to Eagle Road. Now, I don't drive the roads, so, and again, I got to rely on PennDOT. It seems to me like it would make more sense to take it off of King of Prussia Road and put it on Eagle Road.
But their plan is to then eventually take a whole bunch of parking off of the Upper Gulf Road entrance.
But their post-development counts on Upper Gulf still remain the same.
Because they're not removing the parking yet from Upper Gulf Road.
They didn't show post-development counts.
Looking at the numbers,
I showed just the present.
I looked at some of the numbers closer when I was sitting down. There's 44 cars that come in during that PM peak hour off of Upper Gulf. And so, you have this overall number of 100 some odd cars, but there's only 44 cars coming in, either making a left or a right, coming into that site. It was roughly an even distribution, actually traveling east or west on Upper Gulf. So, there's going to be some people that are already out on King of Prussia that continue to come in there because they can make, there's a right turn lane on King of Prussia that you can turn on to Upper Gulf. Those people are going to continue to turn on to Upper Gulf because of the, intersection there with Upper Gulf and King of Prussia. You back up. If you can get into that right turn lane, you're going to get into that right turn lane 20 cars before you'd actually get to the intersection otherwise. So you're going to make that right turn. You're going to make a left into campus just like you would do today. The cars traveling east on Upper Gulf, now we're down to, I forget what the number was off the top of my head, but I think it was, say 18 cars are now turning right. So we're talking now, really, we've boiled it down to 18 cars that you're talking about that are coming east on Upper Gulf, turning right into the site during that PM peak hour. So, the numbers all, you start looking at all these distributions, and if I tried to go over them here, I think I'd put everybody to sleep. But we've tried to boil it down to kind of simple numbers of how many people are going in and out and putting that whole number there. And we're between 5%, 10% of the underlying traffic at each one of those intersections. So looking at moving this structure down there for that PM peak hour, if we're talking about the 18 people making the right, I think a good majority of them are still going to use that same driveway that they did in the previously.
Yeah, I think, again, it continues to get late. I think most of the sentiment of the board, and Kathy can make a motion, but if you could come back with a clear traffic picture of post-development, you understand the issues, you understand the concerns. If you can make your argument a little clearer to everyone and a little more convincing, that might be helpful. But we... if
you're going to make...
well, I'm not going to... I'm going to request that someone make a motion, but if you'd like to say something first.
I was going to say, if where you're heading with that is that you want to table it to get more specific information with respect to the traffic, if we can limit it, rather than having to revisit all the other issues, if what it is you need clarification on the traffic.
Well, I don't think we can limit it, but I think we'd be only too happy to unless the traffic points us in another direction.
You know, all evening, we haven't said it's terrible that it's built into a hill, or it's awful that it's going to be sheltered by trees and vegetation. But, you know, there are traffic concerns. There are some loading concerns. I'm not even sure that the building works perfectly off of Eagle Road without the occasional backup one way or the other. I mean, I don't know where I can get that information. If you can give us that information, that would be helpful. The last comment, throw out, David often signs off on the end of his letter that he recommends preliminary approval. In this particular review, he did not. So that's in the back of my head.
Well, and I'll explain why that's the case, simply because, I mean, I sensed at our last meeting, the Planning Commission was not comfortable with the plan in its current condition, and that's why I rescinded my recommendation.
I also would like to see more information about the left-hand turn coming east on Eagle Road into the new parking structure. Can you explain more as far as can a car pass, what the projected numbers are going in?
Maybe we can do that next time. I mean, let's just, I mean, that's, yeah.
Just to include that with what you're putting for next time.
I would like to also mention that I'd like to see the numbers from 3 o'clock through the 7 o'clock hour per hour, primarily Eagle Road and King of Prussia Road there, because I think that's our concern with what the traffic will do coming out of your building there. So I guess with that in mind, I would make a motion that we table this specifically for the traffic counts, and that we go over that at the next meeting.
Kathy, just for clarity's sake, if you could withdraw your previous motion.
I did.
Okay,
I did.
have you done that?
Yes,
I
I
actually have a
withdrew.
standing, I already have a motion out to table.
Okay.
Okay.
Nobody ever seconded it, which is why the
All right.
conversation continued.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved.
It's fine with me.
Okay, our last applicant for the evening.
Can we take a quick break?
Yes, I'm sorry, we're going to take a few-minute recess.
Okay, if everybody can get to their seats, we'll get started. Okay, our last applicant is SD number 2011 S12 Preliminary Boathouse Realty LP Bentley Homes to subdivide existing 4.63 acre parcel into 10 residential lots with construction of a cul-de-sac at 1430 County Line Road, Villanova, PA. Floor is yours.
I have a short 45-minute presentation.
Jim, our monitors are not on.
This is our second time with the preliminary plan. I think the engineers have worked out most of the stuff that was on our letter. There's a few remaining things left to go. And I think we went over most of the waivers at the last meeting. And at that meeting, we talked about the cul-de-sac length, the width, the right-of-ways, the lot widths as a ratio to their lengths, the driveways, and at that time, you all asked us to go back and just kind of get the letter down, get the list of comments down to a manageable amount. I think we've done that. There's a couple engineering things that still have to be done. There's a question about site distance on 2 driveways, which PennDOT says is fine, and you guys, your ordinance is a little different, says it's a little bit over. But there's driveways across the street from the driveways that are in question. There's driveways all up and down County Line Road. So I think most of the stuff that remains is kind of small engineering stuff. If you want, we can go through it. I can have my engineer come up and your engineer can talk about it. If you have any specific comments that you still have, somebody wasn't here last time, I'll be glad to address that also.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Which you may have addressed the last time. On lot 7, I think it's 7, no, 6 and 10, you don't have a driveway directly from the property to the cul-de-sac. You have an easement going across the 2 neighboring properties. How come you didn't take a little slice of the property and give them a direct access to it?
I think we just felt it was a cleaner way to do it with an easement.
Okay. I know it looks nicer probably.
And you guys have all kinds of front. We didn't want to get a confusing frontage issue. As you know, on those rear lots, we're counting our frontage on Lancaster. If we brought a little strip out and put it on the cul-de-sac, you might say that was our frontage. Got to be careful what you do.
And also, you have the building envelope and the easements on those 2, or at least on the 10, I believe. I have it marked on my plan. The easements across the 2 fronts?
10
here.
doesn't have an easement.
Well, 10 has an easement over 9. And the building envelope that you show is through the easement.
I don't think so.
I think maybe on lot 9, there's a small triangle that's in the easement.
No, he's not 9. Yeah, we can move that back. Yeah.
Okay.
Good eye. Dave, you missed that.
One way to perhaps expedite this a little is to ask David if he, I don't have a parallel review letter from their latest December 20 letter, but maybe I just missed it. I mean, how many things would, David, you feel are unresolved, or what things are unresolved?
I think most of the engineering issues have been resolved. The main thing hanging out there is the site distance. We asked them to take a look at the site distance. We had a traffic engineer go out and look at it. We generally agree with what they've come up with. We've just asked them to base their analysis on the 85th percentile, and then That might generate a waiver for one of the driveways. In other words, they need to have 275 feet of sight distance, which they may or may not have, so they may need a waiver there. They also need a waiver for the sight distance for the proposed intersection. And then an additional waiver for the sidewalk along the proposed cul-de-sac. It was my understanding at our last meeting that the Planning Commission is generally in favor of not putting sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, so a waiver would be needed from that requirement. I guess there was one other thing. We had asked them to provide a truck turning radius for a fire apparatus coming through the cul-de-sac, and also which would generate the available parking, so we have a feel for how much overflow parking could be provided with the plan. I think that's basically it.
Oh, the other lot that had building envelope over the easement was 7. That's a big chunk there.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll fix that. I mean, we didn't know whether you're going to, when we drew this up, we didn't know whether we were going to get an approval or not. So, I mean, the concept, though, is obviously you can't have a building envelope that's in the easement. This is our truck turning radius plan, by the way, right here.
The Delaware County Planning Commission references with regard to possible access issues along County Line Road, plans should also be forwarded to Lower Merion Township and Montgomery County for their review and comment. Did that happen?
We'll have to check to see if they were submitted to Lower Merion.
Okay. I mean, Mr. Bentley knows I'm not happy about all the waivers, but one in particular that is of concern to me because it doesn't seem to have been addressed is number 12, where Lot 4 doesn't have a turnaround and potentially the car is going to have to back out onto County Line Road.
We're not asking for a waiver for that. We'll just put a turnaround into that driveway.
So you'll make that change to the plan?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, no. You still need the waiver to have the access onto a major collector street.
Right, correct.
The issue that was raised was that lot number 4, the driveway doesn't have a turnaround, making it where the car has to potentially back out onto County Line, but you'll change that.
Yes.
The waiver for sidewalks, which, I live in a cul-de-sac, so on the one hand, I see the need to not have a sidewalk in a cul-de-sac. I still wish that in consideration for all of these waivers that you need for this plan, even taking out one more lot and making this a 9-lot subdivision would take care of, I think, some of these funky driveways and things down in the cul-de-sac. It still feels tight down there. And I know that seems strange in this zoning district, but for the size houses that you're now planning, it does still seem tight. And the driveway, particularly between 6 and 7, where it narrows out going into 6, seems pretty narrow. I think it's going to be a little bit more congested back there than it needs to be.
These lots are 3 times the size of the minimum requirement. And we've had this discussion before. We could have come in with a plan that was just jam-packed, and I can't really afford to lose another lot. And I appreciate how the Planning Commission's worked with us, but most of the waivers we have been at our expense to do compromises with a $300,000 cul-de-sac to appease the neighbors and to have better traffic flow. I mean, our original plan, as you remember, had all driveways. It was very simple. It worked, but there were some concerns that the board had, which we changed. We lost 2 lots. I could go on. You've heard my spiel before.
Just a quick question. Lots 4 and 5, could they feed off the cul-de-sac instead of onto the main road? Just as the lots 7 and 6 do?
I don't. We'd probably end up having this. One of the main concerns that the neighbors have had was that our new community would blend in with theirs. And so in terms of the width of the houses and the way we oriented them towards the street, it looks just like theirs do for the most part. There's a couple houses in Lower Merion that are wider, but most of the houses that are in Radnor, a couple in Lower Merion, have the same kind of small front and deep back. If we did it the way you were talking about, we'd probably have the sides of the houses facing the road, and the cul-de-sac would get, I just don't think it would be as nice a plan, to tell you the truth. But we've really tried to, I got to please three people. I got to please you, I got to please three groups. You, the neighbors, and somehow I got to please my customers and make a, try and have successful development.
David, would you be able to sum up what we're looking at here in the way of problems or things that aren't necessarily kosher at this point?
Things that aren't necessarily kosher. Well, as I said, the only what I'll call significant engineering issues hanging out there are just verification of the site distance, and again, the parking, just verifying that there's adequate off-street, overflow parking. Other than that, I mean, most of the issues have been addressed. The stormwater's been addressed, and things of that nature.
If I can just address for a minute, the site distance is particularly for lots 4 and 5 driveways, I believe, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's actually, it's for lot 1 and for the cul-de-sac itself. The cul-de-sac itself, according to our ordinance, requires a 600-foot site distance, which they don't quite have.
But we have a stop sign.
Correct.
So this is looking to the left, okay? If the road was wide open and cars were coming down there at the speed limit, you would need 600 feet. So we have a stop sign, so people stop and then they start to go again. We feel that it meets PennDOT ordinances, and I know it's close. But 4, 5, and lot 1 all have driveways nearby them, and we've moved the driveways around to not line up with the driveways across the street. So, I mean, there's driveways all up and down that street, and all of them don't meet the ordinance. And so, I mean, we can do the study, we can send the traffic engineers out there, but I think it's kind of like, it's a lot of work for something that really should be approved.
Any other board comments? I'd like to invite the public to come up if there's anyone that has a comment.
My name is Barbara Welsh. I live at 1444 County Line Road on the Radnor side, and there's one house between me and the development. And I certainly want to thank all of you for your community service. This is really above and beyond. But my concern is there's just too many houses in too little space. I think currently there are maybe 10 houses between Orchard Way and Airedale Road. So this will double the number of houses. But even more, just looking at the plans and just the way those driveways are so close together with easements going across properties, these private arrangements for things like sewers, it just doesn't sound like the way we do things in Radnor Township. I've lived there for 28 years. And I'm willing to accept change, but I'd really like to see it done in as thoughtful a way as possible. And it's also the future of the township, that houses need to have enough space, and it needs to be safe to get in and out, and it really needs to be the kinds of houses and arrangement that's going to work over the long the long term, and frankly, that people are going to want to live there. So I just ask you to consider that just all these little variances, 5 feet here, well, we can give that, and 12 feet there, well, we'll give on that. It just seems like there's a lot of giving of I think, good Radnor ordinances and rules that are sort of being put to the sideline here. So thank you.
Well, I think we're locked in by one thing of good Radnor rules is that this is R4 zoning. And with that in mind, the lots are larger than what the average R4 property would be. And this may be the wrong zoning for this area, but it's what it's zoned and it's what we have to live with. And what he is developing under, he's allowed to. So I think even though maybe we'd like to see it differently, it is R4 zoning, and that's what it is.
Do we have any other public comment? Okay. How about any other board comment?
I guess I'm still stuck on the driveways coming out to County Line Road. And I just still don't see how that can't be incorporated internally into the development and why that wouldn't be more desirable.
I think when you look at the rest of the street, there are a lot of driveways like this on that street. And I think if you go out directly on the street for those few properties, you're going to have less macadam because you won't have a longer driveway going to it. So, yeah, therefore, less impervious surface. And I think 3 driveways going out there really will not make an impact on the neighborhood because there's already, most of the houses are handled that way. The driveways come straight out onto the road. It just happens to be a county road, but it's like a neighborhood road.
I think this is a plan that we have gotten used to seeing. So not unlike what Mrs. Welsh said a minute ago, we're, okay, well, we'll give them this, and we'll give them that, and we'll give them this, and we'll give them that. This is a really tricky piece of property. When we first saw it, I said it probably wasn't zoned. It is what it is. It's R4. But it's such an unusual R4 with the 2 frontages and such a deep lot that there probably does not exist a true by right plan. There doesn't exist because just by virtue of needing a curb cut or a driveway on county line, that alone made it not a by right plan. So, under Pennsylvania law, where a person has a right to develop something here, something was going to have to be able to be developed. I don't think this is it. I think it's too many. And I think that just because he came in originally with a plan with 16 or 14 or 12 houses on it, and 10 is better, doesn't mean that 10 is right. And that's my opinion on that is not going to change.
Ken, any additions?
I mean, again, I do think we have gotten used to this plan. I think that improvements that have been made are definitely better. There are curbs all along County Line Road. I mean, I've driven it 1,000 times, so I don't think it's any different than what's there existing. It's one of these things where it's tricky property. It's got the Lancaster Avenue piece of it and the visibility of it and all that are going to raise more eyebrows on your typical property like this. But I do think that it's better than what we saw originally. It took our considerations and our recommendations into this plan, and they did fix some things. And I think we have to live with it based on what the zoning is there. And I think it's the best thing. It's the best thing we've seen for this. Put it that way. It's whatever that's worth.
Skip.
Have to turn it on to sound like. I guess I sound like a broken record echoing everyone, but it is R4. And yes, I would prefer 9, but I would have hated 16. I think the developer has been somewhat responsive. I'd be willing to approve this if David is fully satisfied with the remaining items that are out there. I did notice one small note here in number 18. It says that all the wooded area is going to go away and turn to lawn or something. Can you clarify that one thing for me? Number 18 on David Gibbons' letter.
Yeah, because it is R4 and because of, the cul-de-sac, we're going to be doing a lot of grading, so we're going to take down a lot of trees. We've been before the Shade Tree Commission. Most of the trees are invasive maples, and they're in very poor condition. The trees are just falling down all over the place. I'd be more than happy to meet anybody out there and walk the site with them. But we've developed a plan where we're going to be compensating, I think, 172 trees, and I have a landscape plan that I can show you if you would like to look at it, where we are taking down a lot of trees, but we're going to plant a lot of trees too. We're planting 172 new trees.
I guess there was some concern by neighbors about the fact that the traffic volume or sound had increased after the buildings went down. And I guess with trees going down after that, it'll get worse before it gets better 5 or 10 years from now when the trees grow up.
Well, we've had great discussions about the sound and the buffering, and one of the first things I'm going to do is, if you look along this back row right here, there's a berm. It's about 6 feet high, higher than what's there, and I'm going to put pine trees on top of it. And we're going to, it's not going to be a perfect little row like this. We've already changed it, so it's a little bit more natural looking. But I think that will cut down on the noise for the whole neighborhood, to tell you the truth. I really believe it will. Because, it's important to me that I don't have noise and visual impact from my houses.
Right. And I think you mentioned that there was going to be some effort to save the wall or parts of that wall that are there, or that came up at the last meeting.
We're
as
going
well.
to save the wall, yeah. We've tried to do everything you've asked us to do, but you've also asked us to make the neighbors happy. And, my original marching orders when we went to preliminary plan was to lose 2 lots, come up with better traffic plan, cul-de-sac, something, and make the neighbors happy. And I don't know how many of you were at the last meeting, but there was at least 5 people that got up and said what a great job we had done making them happy. So, everybody thinks I've made some progress and some concessions. From where we sit, we think we've made a lot of concessions and we've done a lot of work. We've probably had 5 or 6 meetings with the neighbors. We've put a lot of time into this plan. My business is tough these days. It's hard to make these things work and keep everybody happy. And, it's a very difficult climate. We think this will fill a nice little niche in Radnor. We think we're going to be new construction under $1 million. We think that's a great thing. It's hard to have new construction in Radnor Township under $1 million. So, we think we're very close to having it right, and we'll make these few changes, but we'd like to get your approval tonight if we could.
But since you brought up the dollar amount, what's the sale price?
We think we can be in the $800,000 range.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion? Well, we do have these variances that we need to address. Waivers, sorry, thank you.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we approve the preliminary plan with the, on the condition that the variances or the waivers need to be handled.
All the waivers outlined in Mr. Lay's letter of January 6, 2012.
Yes.
Yes. Could I just add one thing?
Sure.
We've received a directive from staff that they would appreciate if we did not grant waivers for the 500-foot showing existing features within 500 feet. They feel it's important that we get as much information as we can surrounding this site. This issue came up at the commissioners' meeting last night on a couple other projects. So I guess what I would say is we're not going to. I would recommend you do not recommend a waiver from section 255-20B1N. And what we'll do is we'll work with the applicant as well as with the Public Works Director to provide the information necessary for the surrounding property. They may not need to completely comply with that section, but they need to comply to the level staff believes it should be done. So again, we won't grant them relief from this waiver, but we'll work with them to get the information on the plan.
And also correct the easements through the building envelopes.
Can I just talk about what he just talked about?
No.
It's 43 acres. So you're saying you want us to survey 43 acres?
No, that's what
I will walk away. I'll walk away from it.
Right.
You know.
What we're saying is the information that is outlined under that section needs to be provided. Now, how that can be provided probably can be an aerial photograph similar to what you already have in the plan set, modified with sanitary sewer and storm sewer information, which can either probably be gotten through township records or through a GIS system at the county. So that's kind of where we're at. So it's not field survey, most likely. It's just more information than what is currently shown on an aerial photograph that you would get off Google Earth. So.
My recollection, I didn't hear every minute of the meeting last night, but I think someone brought up the idea that if you're going to do aerial photos, it should be during the winter.
It's probably not a bad idea, but yeah, as long as, again, and that's why it'll change from project to project, but we just have to make sure that we have the information that staff feels is necessary on a project-by-project basis. And, you know, again, it won't involve, more times than not, going out and having someone field survey the whole full 500 feet around a project, but more an aerial photograph which has been, further enhanced with the utilities, basically, something to that effect.
So legally speaking, what Dave is recommending is that you grant a partial waiver to that particular section so that they provide the information within 500 feet as requested by the township staff.
Okay. Anybody second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is the
All
motion
Opposed.
Is the motion on the table to approve this plan with the exception of the waiver for the 500 feet?
Assuming that the other waivers are decided to your satisfaction.
Well, I mean, I guess, are you, along with this plan, are you granting all the waiver? Are you recommending all the waivers be granted with the exception of this one waiver we discussed, or?
Yes. Yes, and the easements through the building envelope.
How many waivers are there?
And the turnaround driveway on
All these pages?
4.
No, I think there's something closer to 10.
8 or 10.
Okay. Could we briefly run through those waivers?
Sure.
Brief synopsis.
Yeah, just I'm going through my review letter, starting on page 3, comment number 4. This has to do with the right-of-way width. It's required to be 60 feet. They're requesting a relief to go with 40 feet.
Okay.
Number 5 is a waiver for putting sidewalks along the cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Number 6 is the cul-de-sac length. It's going to be 180 feet instead of the required 250 feet.
Okay.
Number 7 is the it's another
Okay.
the radius, or excuse me, the radius of the cul-de-sac, the right-of-way is going to be 42 feet instead of the required 60. Number 8 is
Width of
similar.
cul-de-sac.
The width of the
Yep.
cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10 is there's a requirement that an intersecting road should be no closer than 600 feet to an existing intersection Their proposed cul-de-sac will be 550 feet. And number 12 is no driveways are to take access onto a collector street, and lots 1, 4, and 5 will have access. So they need a waiver there. Number 13, this was not a requested waiver, but one that is needed regarding the site distance. And number 16, I'm sorry, 15, yeah, you're right. 15 is there's a requirement that lots are not to be more than 2.5 times the depth as to the width ratio. And number 16 is, again, another section which requires sidewalk be provided along roads, and they're requesting a waiver for not having to put the sidewalk along the cul-de-sac.
Yes.
I believe that's it.
I'm in agreement with them. I think the majority of them are minimal, with regard to dimensions of the cul-de-sac. It's not going to affect the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals in the neighborhood, I think, on any of those. And you were correcting the site distance on the one. Where was the one with the site distance issue?
It's number 13, top of page 5.
We're not correcting it. There's a stop sign there.
Oh, the stop sign.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the one waiver you're asking is for with the lot width and depth. That's a recommendation. I don't know if I need a waiver for that. Not that it makes any difference, but that's kind of up to the Planning Commission without a waiver, I think. But if you want a waiver, we'll, whatever.
Just so everybody's clear, I guess maybe we get a second on that and take a full vote again.
Okay, I'll restate. I propose that we recommend approval, preliminary approval of this. It is a preliminary, as I recall.
That's correct.
Okay. With the various noted waivers.
There's 10 of them.
Is there 10?
Yes, I counted.
With the 10 waivers, because I do not feel that they affect the health, safety, and welfare of the individuals involved with this. They're minimal.
Now, in your opinion, is that part of the
I know.
motion?
Well, that's my thinking behind it. Okay.
And I assume you also want a
Then
condition.
the partial waiver. Partial waiver also.
Conditioned on the additional partial waiver, conditioned upon them correcting the plans so that the building envelopes are not showed to overlap the driveway easements, and conditioned that they do the turnaround on lot 4.
Correct. Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Approved. Let's see, old business is next.
No, there's no.
I have a quick question under old business. Peter?
Yes.
Are there any questions about the bed and breakfast ordinance from last night that we need to answer, or are you?
I am completely ignorant of what happened last night regarding the bed and breakfast.
Okay, the bed and
ordinance.
breakfast ordinance was discussed last night at the Board of Commissioners meeting, and they had 2 questions, and John Rice, in the meeting that I watched, it made it sound that John was going to touch base with you, and perhaps he hasn't, so then you have no questions for us.
That's correct.
Great, that's it.
Okay, for old business, how about new business? Yeah, right. Okay, and public participation? And, yeah, right. Does anybody want to make a motion we adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.